He is an honest man named Charlotte. Not too long ago, he turned on one system. Because of this, the man he locked up makes him feel very uneasy. During the war, his friends insisted that the information was wrong, and the war was already happening. Charlotte was initially against the whole thing. The warriors kept yelling at this point that they were being used as bait, but everything changed the moment he didn't find himself in that battle. The demon wondered if this man was brave. She opened her mouth wide and used her sharp teeth to rip the man into pieces, saying he wasn't as good as her king. A girl who had fallen in battle urged Charlotte to run away. The war was intensifying, and he didn't need to worry about her. Charlotte was very brave, so he didn't need to be a hero. The man replied that he was here to protect the city. How could he run away at a time like this? Charlotte looked at the whole situation and told his partner not to worry. He could handle her. Demon was bored, and she said that people here are weak. She's even losing interest in him. Charlotte said it's a fight, and he's not going to run away. But then the partner looked at him and asked, "Is he bleeding?" He just stands there, staring, as if his body is unable to respond. What's the point in talking about fighting when he can't even fight back? Let him get out of here. The gargoyles turned to the princess and told her that there was another one standing in that direction, waiting to die. The princess immediately ordered her warriors to kill him. She ran towards the warrior herself. Charlotte wasn't scared at all and was waiting for the moment when the enemy would come closer. The princess said they would make his head into a wine glass for the beloved king. Suddenly, a system appeared and said it loved bad guys. It used a protective orb to protect its master. The princess, her eyes filled with rage, ran as fast as she could to kill him. However, she encountered a barrier and couldn't reach him. But the princess did not lose hope. She used her claws to destroy the defense, then grabbed the guy by the back of his head. She got very close to him, opened her mouth, and showed her teeth, yelling and showing her strength. The system confirmed that the kiss had begun and boosted her attack by 100 points. Charlotte said that this system could permanently increase his effectiveness in battle. His partner looked at all of this and asked him, surprised, "What is he doing?" Gargoyle also approached the princess and asked her what she was doing. Charlotte didn't leave them to attack him and started swinging his sword and making out with the princess. The princess regained her composure, opened her eyes wide, and stepped back. Charlotte wiped her drool from her face and stared intently at the enemy who had kissed him. But the princess couldn't understand what was happening to her. She wondered, would she really kill him? But why did she go for it with her lips? At that moment, she realized it was probably a ghost. Charlotte said that for the safety of the city's people, he would do everything he could, even if he died. The monsters said their princess had kissed a man. Earlier, a monster said he heard that the princess found a baby on the street. It looks like it's true. The second monster said he had heard about it too, but he didn't think he was human. It's no wonder this type is calm and not hiding. The elder monster came over and said that they were all presumptuous and foolish. They said that no one should question the princess's feelings for the king. The princess realized that the king must not know that she had kissed a human. She was surprised by how fast her heart was beating. The system immediately showed that her concern was 15%. She didn't feel sorry for him and ordered her warriors to kill him. Charlotte, like a true warrior, stood her ground and prepared to take the full brunt of the enemy's attack. He blocked the first attack, but was also attacked from behind. He didn't have time to dodge and counterattack, but looking at his sword, he felt it become light and saw that his sword had broken with a single blow. He did not let his guard down and was ready to fight on, even if he had a broken sword in his hands. The monster wouldn't leave him alone, and with his iron hammer he attacked. But Charlotte seized the moment and dodged it. Charlotte felt that his defense hadn't increased, but his attack level was now around 100 points. Charlotte took all the will in his hands, and in a retaliatory attack, he broke the axe of the monster that had attacked him earlier. But he was not left alone, and suddenly he felt himself being attacked from behind. Turning around abruptly, he managed to attack back, and his attack became very strong, from which the monster flew back a few meters. The partner said with surprise as he tossed the fighter into the air, "This is not the kind of power an F level can have." Charlotte is upset after this attack, because he wants to chop him in half. But he scratched his torso. Unexpectedly, the princess herself came and flew into him with 2 feet. But Charlotte was not surprised and applied manual defense. Everyone was surprised by this explosion, for afterward everything sprinkled and scattered in different directions. The monsters stood still and said that the princess had felled him. One of the monsters was already running to help and wanted to finish him off, but the princess wouldn't let him do that, and using her long tail she punched him. The monster was surprised and didn't understand what the princess was doing. She said for them all to hear her, and she wouldn't let anyone do that. Is it really necessary to kill everyone who disobeyed an order? She personally wants to train that person. The system immediately showed that her concern was 91%. The monsters cheered hard and yelled at the princess to kill him. The princess turned into a monster and opened her mouth with sharp teeth and told the warrior to die. Suddenly Charlotte looked at her ulo and saw it lengthened. The system showed that the defense was 50 points. Charlotte was already thinking, is this really the price of his strength? Let him get over it honestly. Remorse to his character, but it's all for the safety of the people in the city. But that could be taken as an insult. The princess felt that she had become so strange. She took it upon herself to do such a thing to a human being. But why is it like this? She's powerful in Warcraft. It's obvious, but her body no longer obeyed her. The system said his agility was 120 points. The monster looked at all this and said that the princess wanted to kill him, but how strange he felt. The monster turned to the others and shouted that it was brazen, and let everyone look at the spectacle. The princess is looking for an impulse in him. Let him better keep quiet if he doesn't understand. Charlotte had seen all this time that defense had added 10 points, and offense 150. He decided that his points should now be enough to deal with this group of fighters. Charlotte shouted at the top of his voice that things were about to turn the other way. He grabbed his broken sword and tried to stab the princess in the back. The monsters had time to yell to the princess to be careful. The princess was at the ready and grabbed his hand with her tail. Then she clamped down even harder on his throat and didn't want to let go. Charlotte realized that wasn't enough. Charlotte tried to resist, but he didn't have the strength. The monster stared and screamed his thoughts were too foul. Let the princess kill him. The princess, on the contrary, felt so good right now. She should be able to contain herself. She told the guy that little people dare to fight against Warcraft, but in her mind it's different now, and she wants to strip him naked. She couldn't help herself and clawed at his clothes. Ripped off her clothes, she said, let the people come and see what a gulf there is between the little people and the beasts of Warcraft. She wished, at this moment, to see his human muscles. The monster screamed at the princess to punish him. Charlotte was surprised that she tore through his armor with ease. But suddenly the princess began to reach out at him. Charlotte said he couldn't stand it, and he couldn't get any closer. But the princess all the while felt that something was rising from the depths of her heart. But she could hold back. Charlotte saw that his defense was already 100 points. The princess opened her mouth again and went to kiss him, but Charlotte felt all along like he was being tried to be run over. And it was very heavy. She kissed him again and didn't even let go. Charlotte felt that his current strength was not enough to defeat them. The partner looked at the whole thing and couldn't do anything and saw Charlotte fighting. Charlotte thought at that moment that for the safety of the city, he could sacrifice himself. Charlotte took it all in and realized that he needed to increase the value of his power. He grabbed her head and started kissing her. The system immediately started showing how much his strength was increasing. Everyone was surprised and watched what they were doing. But suddenly one of the huge enemies came. The monster let go of his sword and turned to the princess. She turned around and was very excited. She came to her senses, and when she saw the monster, she was terrified. The system said that it was discovered that the king had received a critical hit. The king asked them what they were doing. The system immediately told the guy that all the bonus values were doubled, and he was up to a high level. The king became completely furious and said that he would kill him. His powers were so terrifying that the whole earth began to tremble. The princess told the king it wasn't what he thought. She would explain everything to him. Charlotte tried to get away from her embrace and was surprised, for he didn't know that his level would be raised that way. The king did not speak to them, and using his green eyes attacked the guy with his beam and told him to leave his beloved wife alone and tell him to stay away from her. The king used his speed and got close to them and slammed his huge sword into the guy. Charlotte didn't have time to dodge and took everything on his body. His partner asked him if he was okay. Charlotte said he could still hold out, and felt that this monster instantly appeared in front of him, and its attack power was also surprisingly high. The king asked his wife, "Didn't she say it wouldn't happen again?" She realizes what she told him, doesn't she? Let him take her next time. But why would she do that? The princess couldn't resist for long and replied to him that he himself was the reason, and it was all because of him. And why had he come so late? Everyone was greatly surprised, and Barrett himself did not know what to say to her. The princess said it was because he had come too late. She had almost made the same mistake. He did the wrong thing, and he has the nerve to ask her questions like that. He's threatening her. The princess wouldn't leave him alone and said he had taken so long to get there. But what had he been doing all this time? The princess got very upset and turned her husband's back. Barrett told her not to be angry. He was wrong. He saw a lot of people running away, so he wanted to deal with them. And now he promises her it won't happen again. He was really wrong. The monster watched and told the others that their king was very attached to the princess. He can bow his head to her and admit his mistakes. He would probably marry a female tyrant like the princess. The second monster said he wasn't like their king. He'd rather be a bachelor. But the third was supportive and said that tomorrow he would confess his love to Miss Satter. Charlotte at this time thought that he would now quietly slip away while they were not paying attention to him. The difference in levels between him and these monsters was too great. The princess could not recover and cried. But Barrett soothed her and told her not to cry, for his heart was breaking. Charlotte asked his partner if she could walk, but he should probably carry her on his back. The partner replied that no, her leg was only injured. She could walk. The princess was saying at this point that it was all because he was late and made her seduce that guy. Their loyal and pure love almost got entangled. Barrett couldn't calm her down and told her to stop crying. It was all his fault. He realized head-on and said he was going to kill this guy, and then his concubine wouldn't be sad. The princess hugged her husband and replied that everything was right, and the king is the love of her life. Even if they die, they will go to oblivion together. And how can she fall in love with other men? Barrett yelled at them for being idiots. The enemies are running away, and asked the monsters if they wanted to stop them. The monster replied to the king that the princess said it was best not to interfere. The king started yelling at them and saying that they were a bunch of brainless idiots. Barrett didn't leave them alone, and using his attack hit the rocks that were about to fall on them. Charlotte said he was coming. Barrett came down right in front of him and yelled at the guy that he was going to kill him. Barrett asked him how dare he seduce his favorite concubine, and slammed into the guy. Charlotte couldn't dodge and took everything on his body. The princess saw that the guy fell down and she even felt sorry for him. Charlotte felt that his ribs seemed to be broken. He can't defend himself against their attack. His speed is too fast, and now he was no match for him at all. Barrett attacked him again and screamed that he would tear him in two, and that would be the price for seducing his favorite concubine. Charlotte realized at that moment that he had no other choice and would have to level up, but Charlotte said his system was locked down. At the point he had already said goodbye with his life. But the princess punched the king and ordered him to keep him out of harm's way. Barrett was confused and greatly surprised that his concubine had saved the life of the man who had seduced her. Charlotte saw all of this and realized that he had better run away from here. Barrett asked his concubine why. Why did the princess hit him? Barrett asked again. Did she feel sorry for him? While running, the system showed him that he had upgraded. Charlotte asked himself, would he be able to defeat him if he fought him now? He's level 1000, after all. But Charlotte made the decision that he would rather talk to him from a safe distance. The princess drooled at this time and said that she really wanted this human body. Barrett caught the concubine and asked what she was talking about. Just now she herself was saying that she loved him more than anyone else in the world. Let her not go there. But Princess tore her arm off and ran after the guy screaming that she didn't want to take it anymore. The princess threw herself at the guy and was saying that she wanted release. Charlotte couldn't run away and let herself be caught by her. The system told the guy that survivability had gone up to 180 points. Charlotte realized he could only let her control him now. Barrett yelled to the princess that it was all because he wasn't good enough and everyone was taking advantage of him. It's his fault. He's going to kill him now and go back to normal. The princess looked at him and yelled at him to get out of here and not bother them. Barrett didn't want to take it all in and yelled at her not to do it. But suddenly his partner ran up and yelled at the princess to let him go. Charlotte shouted to Bella not to touch her. It was too dangerous. The princess stopped her from attacking and grabbed her with her tail. The princess wouldn't let go of the guy and used him to her advantage. She started to make out with him and wondered why she didn't feel the way she used to. And so deep never had she had a hint of joy. Barrett looked at them at this time and said, she had lied to him. She had deceived. Barrett lost his temper and said he wasn't ready to give up, and he jumped on her and wanted to kill her. The princess raised her head and looked at him with strange eyes, but she stood up and told him to stop. He still loved her. The princess replied that she would not stop and would continue to do as she wished. Barrett was badly crushed. After all, her favorite concubine had cheated on him, and the system said the Demon King had passed out again, self-destructing. The princess asked him what he was up to. The monsters answered her that it wasn't her fault, and thought also that maybe they should disobey the order and run away from here. The system told the guy at this time that the level was raised to 10, and a new skill was unlocked. Charlotte decided to take this chance and grabbed his sword and cut off the king's head. The system, after killing the king's said body, turned into a shadow and teleported in a circle within 5 meters of the enemy, delivering a shattering attack. The princess stood next to the king's body and couldn't believe such a thing. But Charlotte realized that if he kept pumping, he would gain more skills. The princess said he hadn't done that in previous times. He should have behaved more calmly the second time. Why did he faint then? But suddenly Barrett woke up and swooped down on the princess with both hands. The princess did not expect this and took him in her arms. Charlotte's partner was down. The princess due to holding the king in her arms and having a hard time. Barrett told the princess to keep her promise and die with him. The princess replied that she would not do that. The system said that Barrett was about to die. The princess was screaming at him to let her go. Charlotte decided to help the princess, and coming up behind her swung his sword and slashed the king's back. The princess was lowered from the hands of the king, who tried to drag her behind him to the other world. Barrett was left headless and was on his last breath, turning to his beloved. Suddenly something happened and Charlotte and her partner, and along with the princess, moved to another place. When he landed on the ground, Charlotte wondered if he had fallen to the bottom of the dungeon. He saw that some strange animal was lying on top of him. The system said that this animal's name is Yugu, and she is a linlang lizard, and its health level is 9. His partner came to his senses as well and turned to Charlotte from the pain in his head. The system showed him that the Demon King was dead, and a reward had been received, a map of the underground city of night. Charlotte thought immediately, what other card? He wondered whether he should accept this card or not. He needed to think hard now. Suddenly Bella raised her body and looked at Charlotte. She stepped aside and apologized to him. Charlotte thought for a moment and ordered the system to open the map. He looked at the map and saw the paths, traps, resources depicted, and all the rooms were disabled. Charlotte rejoiced and shouted, that great. We can go to the boss's room without worrying about getting lost. Bella asked him what he was talking about and what had he seen. Charlotte decided not to tell her and answered that it was nothing. And now it turns out he's the only one who can see the system. Charlotte lifted Bella up and said it was time for them to move out. Suddenly Charlotte felt very sick. He felt like he had something inside him. Falling to his knees, he began to vomit. Bella was surprised and asked him what was wrong with him, but the liquid he had vomited sucked into his hand. Charlotte was abruptly in a lot of pain and even raised her hand up to let the pain spread throughout her body. Charlotte was in pain. He couldn't take it anymore. He was twisting around in great pain. Bella watched him in agony and decided to hug him. But Charlotte felt his back bleeding at the same time. And you can't rub against the ground. His body is so hot. It's like he's on fire. Suddenly everything went wrong and his finger was burned. After so much pain, Charlotte stopped screaming and began to slowly regain consciousness. Charlotte says it's okay and it's over. And he's perfectly fine. Bella asked him what was happening to his body. Why was it melting? Charlotte realized that he had been poisoned. Warcraft had attacked the city about 6 months ago. He saw several monsters fighting a hero from the guild, and they grabbed the box. And with that box, the monster wounded him. But he was shaken, and their fight in the ruins. The box was cut open, and slowly the fluid chicked to the ground. Soon blood was pouring from the sky. Suddenly he smelled a pungent odor, and now he might even vomit. But the guy couldn't hold the box for long in his hands, and feeling the pain he threw it on the ground. All around the monsters were screaming, their bodies were melting. He was in a pile of rocks, and then the bloody rain wouldn't hit him, and his back hurt like hell, like it was melting. But he was poisoned by that foul odor. And when he woke up, he was already in the hospital. The doctor said he had a year to live at the most, but the system appeared in front of him and showed that the demon god's blood was the antidote. Charlotte was surprised and didn't understand what it was. The system told him to log in and become a player. He will get tips on how to get the blood of the demon god. And now he has a choice to make, whether he agrees or not. Soon afterward, he learned what poisoning was. Right in this underground city. Charlotte said they need to go. There's a room with clothes and tools. They'll go there first. But they weren't the only ones in the dungeon. A group of warriors were alert and waiting for the moment to fight. Suddenly, the dungeon trap is triggered and Captain Tyr orders everyone to stand back, and there's a chance. But the trap was so unexpected that a beam of sunlight hit his ally's head directly. Tyr has told everyone not to move, and if they move, it will trigger the other mechanisms. And even Claude, who had the strongest armor of them all, agreed to have his head shot off. The warriors asked how they were to get through then. Tyr said no one else would get through. They finally made it. But they can't go back. Sirius came up to them and said that these were old rules, and this rule has the lowest rank. But one of the crusade team, Soldier Makue, decided to run, but Sirius stood in front of him and told him to walk over and find the right path, and he should know the consequences of disobeying orders. Tyr came over and stopped Sirius, saying that he had made an arrow that could fly both backwards and forwards. Let him explore the path first, discover at least one mechanism. Then he'll increase his survivability. But Sirius didn't like that and immediately chopped the orb with his sword. Sirius told him to let him take another look at the notes he'd made, or else he would kill him. Teague became very upset after saying that and even let go of his hand. But Sirius told Quias to get up and explore the path. Kue slowly got to his feet, but they could not hold him, for fear was beyond his strength and covered him completely. Kue continued on his way and slowly took one step at a time, trying to survive the place. He took another step and thought he missed the mechanism, but further on, he stayed where he was and wondered which way to step. He had two choices, either to the right or to the left. Sirius was already angry and asked him what he was doing. Let him waste no time and go faster. Kue, with sweat on his face, took a chance and made his move. Seeing that all was well, he sighed with joy. Sirius had been standing behind him the whole time and said, "Not bad. Let him continue." Kue told himself that he might die, and he would definitely die. But suddenly his legs gave out, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Kue screamed that he didn't want to die, and he would come home. But the mechanism malfunctioned, and he was left headless. The warriors were surprised and said that this time the attack was from below. Maybe the location of the mechanisms is always different, and what's more, the attack comes out of the blue every time. There's no telling where it's going to come from. Sirius decided to use all of his men to make the journey and told the lowest rank to go now. Suddenly someone told Captain Sirius that the door was open. Charlotte came out and asked how they got here. The warriors immediately told the captain that it was a decoy team. Sirius thought that all decoys should be killed. This guy disobeyed his order. How did they come by? Tyr saw Bella and asked if she was okay. Sirius told the guy he was an idiot. And why are they still alive? Charlotte suddenly remembered that they had put a sword in front of his face the day before he left and told him to tell him everything. How he knew the color of his wife's underpants. Charlotte replies to him that he is practicing his intuition for the next battle. It allows him to guess the colors of objects around him. It was Sirius, and he wanted to kill him. He was yelling at the guy to talk, what his relationship was with his wife. Otherwise, he'd kill him right there. The other warriors held their captain and told him to calm down. It is illegal to kill people in the city. Charlotte said he would never let him slander him and compromise his integrity. Now he would show him the results of his training. Charlotte immediately told who had what underwear on their body. The warriors were surprised that he had guessed everything. The warrior immediately told the captain that he agreed to kill him right away. The other guy replied that he wasn't guessing. You can't kill him in the city. If someone discovers the body, there will be trouble. Sirius asked him, And what did he suggest? The warrior replied that it would be better to send him to the decoy team. No need to kill. Charlotte realized he was going around in circles and changing gear. How on earth could they have met this team? They were lost. Sirius turns to Charlotte and tells him to go. And as team captain he orders him. Charlotte realized that the captain wanted the low-ranking crew members to explore the path. But Tyr shouted at him not to move. Tyr told the captain that since they were able to get there alive, they should just follow their route and bypass the trap. The crew members shouldn't take any chances. Sirius said that they had spent dozens of valuable battle team members to destroy the rank dungeon boss. There was no time to retreat, and he's doing it for the sake of the team, and if Tyr doesn't like it, maybe he'll go ahead and show the way himself? Sirius asked the boy. Hadn't he been practicing his instincts? It was time to contribute to the team. He must remember the consequences of disobeying orders. The system told him the card was open. Bella yelled at Charlotte not to go. There's something wrong with this road, and they better find another way or another way. Charlotte said that the captain had already given the order. He had to go. Don't worry, he'll be fine. The warriors started shouting that he was coming, and without hesitation, he took the first step. Did he just rely on his intuition? The system told him to go forward 3 squares, and then left 2 squares. Charlotte followed the system and walked. The warriors said he took 3 steps and nothing happened. He was very lucky. Probably a few more steps and it would be over. But Charlotte moved on and said to go left in 2 cages. The warrior shouted that he made it. He took another step. Charlotte went through like a 1-2 punch. Everyone couldn't believe he could make it, and they asked him if he knew the right way. Tyr asked the warrior from where. Information about the terrain of the first half of the dungeon would have cost the lives of a dozen scouts. Suddenly the Charlotte was already on the end of the path, and the warriors were scared and screaming. He started jumping. That's it. It's up to his luck. Charlotte played hard in the moment, and on the last jump shot, nearly lost their balance. Sirius looked at it and thought, why didn't the mechanism work? The system at that moment told the guy that he needed to go 5 cells ahead. Charlotte was already glad he was almost at the end. But the warriors looked at it and believed he could do it. The system told him he'd made it to the end of the road. The warriors said the guy was unharmed, and the mechanism never once malfunctioned. And does he really rely on intuition to get around all the mechanisms? Charlotte said that this was the result of his training. It's not his and Xueqin's fault, but Sirius didn't believe him and placed his sword next to Charlotte's head. He couldn't believe it was serendipity. This kind of thing is nothing but luck. Sooner or later it would run out. And Sirius said he would go ahead then. In a moment Charlotte looked under his feet and saw a mushroom standing nearby. The system told him it was a Warcraft blue mushroom, and after consumption, it adds physical strength and relieves pain. One of the side effects is diarrhea. Charlotte thought she must be hungry, and maybe pick some mushrooms for her. The guy didn't think twice about picking the mushroom. He said it smelled so good, and how sorry he was that people couldn't eat them. But nothing bad would happen if you just licked it a little bit, right? Charlotte decided to take a little lick of the mushroom. Sirius suddenly saw him and asked what it was in his hands. Charlotte replied that it was a mushroom. Sirius, like a pathetic and insufferable person, took it immediately from his hands. Sirius didn't even ask what kind of mushroom it was and immediately started eating it, and said as if it wasn't. After the dungeon was invaded, all the resources belonged to the guild and his squad. Sirius told him not to go off on his own, and to always lead the way. That's an order for him. Charlotte replied that the order would be obeyed. He would obey his orders without question. Always go ahead of the crew. Never stand behind the captain. Sirius said to keep it that way from now on. Tyr was by Bella's side at the time and said he didn't know she was being held hostage, and he hopes she's in a position to talk. He, as deputy squad captain, can authorize her to leave for another squad. Bella said she had come voluntarily. Tyr asked her why. Suddenly, she looked toward Charlotte, who said that this gate leads to the main boss and all around is dead ends. The doctor told the girl that she had bandaged her fracture. Bella was pleased and thanked him for his help. Tyr turned to her and told her that if she was just trying to protect this F-class guy, she'd better go to the scout squad or she might die. The scout squad is made up of lower-ranked people. They are decoys. As long as they live, you can spend guild resources, and the only way to get resources is to be bait. And there's no need to be so stupid. He's rank B, and he can protect her. No need to move away from him next time. Charlotte was telling the captain that there were no traps behind the door. It was safe to go ahead. Sirius answered him to go first then. Sirius said there's nothing to it. Doesn't he have his own capable squad or something? Why would he risk it at a time like this? Sirius ordered him to open the gate and then told his warriors to be on guard. But what Sirius was really thinking about was how he should go if his stomach hurt. Let them beware of the attack. Charlotte opened the gate and stopped. The warriors said the gate was open. Let them take precautions. Sirius suddenly couldn't take it anymore, and his stomach was really bothering him. But he couldn't shit himself either. Behind him, the warriors suddenly smelled a strange odor and thought, "What does it smell like?" Charlotte didn't stop and walked forward. Sirius asked him what was inside there, but felt like he had a massive stomach ache. Also at the worst possible time. But suddenly he thought it must be the mushroom. This is the end. He can't move at all. Charlotte said his observation was that there were traps everywhere. He ordered everyone to follow him and run past all the obstacles. Sirius asked for the rope in him and told him to stop. He asked the boy where he was in a hurry, and that was an order for him. But the warriors didn't understand what was going on and asked, "What's the matter? And what's in the back? And why run like that?" But Sirius was already very sick and couldn't stand it. Behind him, Tyr said it was a toxic odor. The warrior was also supportive and said he could smell it. There really are a lot of traps here. But the warrior asked, why did that smell seem so familiar to him? Sirius turned around and told them to stop talking. They don't want everyone to get poisoned. Walking to the door, Sirius turned to the boy. Charlotte asked the commander, "What's wrong?" Sirius told the guy that he must have known about the side effects of those mushrooms. Did he do that on purpose? Charlotte replied that he didn't know. But what's wrong with them? Sirius replied that it was nothing. Suddenly the warrior walked over and told the commander that he must be tired. Then he could sit down and get a good rest. Sirius punched him and told him to sit down himself. They're hitting him hard. But it's time for them to continue on their way. But Sirius didn't end there and told Charlotte that if he ran again, he would chop his head off. Charlotte replied that he understood. As he continued on his way, he told the others not to step on those tiles. But at this time, there is a big monster near them that was guarding the place. But they were lucky because he was now in hibernation. Charlotte pointed her finger and said they should go that way. Suddenly, the monsters woke up and walked around the hidden paths. The system told the guy that no touching was allowed here. Charlotte thought this must be the last test. Sirius felt that the further into the depths he went, the fewer obstacles there were. None of the traps worked. There had never been anything like this in Warcraft. He wondered if Charlotte had gone through them himself, but he couldn't believe his eyes. How could that be? And if Charlotte hadn't followed his squad, he probably would have eaten someone Class D. Not to mention he wouldn't have made it here. Charlotte said for them to already go quickly, and they would be at the boss soon. Sirius saw that this guy had already reached the boss, and he wasn't even ranked high. Whether it was his luck or something else, it would end here and now. Sirius decided to immediately kill him now and used his sword. But suddenly with his sword, he hit a hanging rock that didn't need to be touched. Charlotte felt that something was wrong and looked up to see that the rock was about to collapse on him. Sirius thought that all the courage of an F-rank fighter would be lost because of the traps of this dungeon. And quite logically so. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared and nearly killed Charlotte with its tail. Sirius was greatly surprised after this, and the monster immediately smacked him over the head with its tail. The monster didn't wait long and surrounded them from different directions. But Charlotte said there was a cave-in. Sirius got to his feet and realized that he had reacted quickly and covered himself with his sword, and he could have died already. Charlotte was on the other side saying it was over, and he was trapped. Suddenly someone appeared and asked, "Is anyone here?" Charlotte turned around and saw a girl emerge from the darkness. The stranger said she felt sick to her stomach. The warriors were surrounded by various monsters. One of them was a rank B scorpion puppet, a shuttle puppet. Tyr said for everyone to get ready to fight. But Bella felt differently at this time, for the sword she had been given was terribly heavy. Tyr told them to take out their shields and defend themselves, and don't let him move. They need to block his attacks. The warriors immediately got ready and pulled out their shields. Tyr told the archers to run away and stand behind him, and drew their bows and prepared to shoot. The archers stepped back and immediately aimed their arrows straight at the monster. The monster was trapped and took everything on its body. Tyr yelled for them to keep attacking. It didn't take long for the monster to tolerate all of this and unleashed his trump attacks. The attacks were so strong that the warriors couldn't hold their shields in their hands. Tyr felt that he had fended off all the arrows with his mighty boss energy alone. As a result, the warriors' attacks were off and no damage was done to him. Sirius asked, wondering why on earth they were standing still. Let them not fear the aura of some Warcraft boss. They can all beat them. He doesn't even doubt them. There's nothing to fear, just one Warcraft boss. At this time, Charlotte asked, looking at the darkness, "What was that sound? Was it rumbling now? Is that the Warcraft boss?" But suddenly someone attacked him, and the iron tail almost hit him. Charlotte dodged and stood there like a stumbling block. Charlotte asked, "Is that the tail?" Looking up, he saw a huge monster flying at him. After the first attack, Charlotte dodged and stayed out of harm's way. The monster was ready to be torn to pieces because he was trespassing on his territory. Charlotte didn't run away from the enemy and took the fight. Taking a stand, he told the monster to then take 3,190 damage from his fist. The blow was so strong that he himself had not expected such a thing. His fist tore through the monster's chest. A voice appeared out of the darkness and told the guy that the guy had just broken one of his scorpion puppets with a single blow. Charlotte realized that the antidote that could cure him of the poison was inside the boss. He can't waste any more of his time on some useless fights and people like him. Anyway, he has the map. He just needs to get out of here soon and leave him alone. The girl said it didn't matter so much now. He was going to throw away all those things that had been touched by people anyway. Shadil said she originally wanted to rip his head to shreds with that puppet, but she feels like she'll have to do it by hand now. Charlotte was surprised and realized that the Warcraft boss was a girl. He told the girl that she wouldn't be able to hurt him that easily. Shadil started laughing and asked him, was he serious? She wasn't going to lay a finger on his body. Shadil realized that she would hit him without touching him once. She'd have to deal with him first, and then those people outside. Charlotte said he's a brave knight. It's his duty to protect other people, so he will stay here and fight to the end. Even if he had to use up all his remaining energy, he would end it once and for all. Shadil immediately tried to attack and asked, "Even so?" She put her foot around his head. She didn't play with him for long and lowered him to the ground. The system told him he was paralyzed. Shadil said he was just another boy who grossly overestimated his abilities. But Charlotte's percentage of calmness was 16. In the other direction, a monster was fighting the guys and even defeating them. Tyr told them to look over here. The Warcraft boss head turned red, and it looks like their blows are working. Charlotte had been above her the whole time and realized she was fast. Shadil said that the fact that they are still able to walk is impressive for a normal human. It's pretty good. But that was the end of it. Shadil continued and even said that Lord Nay hates it when one enters his cave. Charlotte realized that this Warcraft boss was too powerful. He wouldn't get away with it that easily, but he would stop her at all costs. Charlotte didn't take any chances and licked her leg. Shadil was surprised and asked what was that? That's disgusting. He was seriously doing that to her leg. Fetishist fucking fetish. The system immediately showed that the sagacity had gone up by 220 points. Sirius at the same time on the other side received strong attacks and was losing to the monster. Bella stood still and saw that so much time had passed and they still hadn't gotten anywhere. And Charlotte's been stoned too. And now they have to rescue him as soon as possible before he's killed. Bella turned to Tyr and told him to cover her. She's going to help Charlotte out of the rubble. Tyr told her not to do that, but it was too late. Bella immediately ran to save her friend. She thought she was already running to his rescue, and everything would be okay soon. She would help him out. But the monster saw that she was trying to get away from him and began to chase her. Bella dodged the first attack, but Tyr came at the second and fought it off. Tyr realized that Charlotte was brave enough. Why was she so worried about him? It's just a bunch of rocks. He can handle himself. Shadil suddenly looked at her foot and saw this guy's saliva. The system immediately showed that the sagacity was already 340 points. Charlotte started coughing and said that he had finally gotten out. Shadil asked him how dare he get her feet dirty. She would have him pay for that. The system told the guy he didn't have a weapon on him It's impossible to use instant cut skills. Charlotte said that was just disgusting. He knew he should have brought the gun with him. And now all that's left to use is the tip of a pin. Charlotte used all his strength, and suddenly the first punch he threw missed. Shatil dodged and immediately kicked him in the leg. Shatil at the moment of impact felt that this guy's face was so soft. She even felt pleasant. She didn't stop there and continued her kick. She got a laugh and gave him a really good shove. But the system showed him that the arousal level was 54%. Shatil grabbed her head and wondered what she was thinking. Shatil turned to her bird and said that he should help her kill this guy. This was just in case the people outside still managed to run to Senior Nay's room. She pointed the monster at him to kill him. Charlotte stood still, waiting for her moment to attack. Charlotte felt that basically, he and agility would be enough to dodge her attacks. He realized that all the magic power would accumulate in his hands. He picked a moment and aimed his attack directly at the monster. But suddenly Shatil attacked the guy again and grabbed his head with her feet. She pinned him to the ground and stood over him. Shatil said she had succeeded in capturing him again. And this time he wouldn't get away from her. She would strangle him with her legs. But suddenly things changed drastically. Charlotte didn't stop and wished she could feel the force of his hand's compression. He hugged her so tightly that she even started to scream. The system immediately showed that the defense was 130 points. Shatil couldn't help herself and jumped off him. But then she stepped her foot right into his head. Shatil told him not to dare use his disgusting hands. He touched her leg too. Shatil suddenly used her monster, and releasing the handcuffs, she pinned him right to the ground and didn't block his arms. Charlotte realized that he had just severed Z-Wei's scorpion tail. She's pushing him so hard. And he doesn't think he'll be able to dodge it now. Shatil said she was going to crush his head right now. All this time the system was showing that everything was increasing. Shatil felt very strange. Her heart was becoming more and more pleased with the fact that she was stepping on him with her foot. As if she wanted to step on his whole body in its entirety, she was bursting with interest. And their entire human race deserves to be only under her feet. Meanwhile, on the other side, warriors were fighting another monster. Tyr said that the Warcraft boss seems to be getting tired little by little. He's losing his grip, and they need to put in as much effort as possible. They're all going to win. Shatter stepped on it again and felt a lovely sensation. The system showed that her arousal level was 89%. Tyr was yelling at Bella to be careful. There's a scorpion's tail coming up behind her. Bella didn't expect it and suddenly saw a scorpion's tail in front of her. But she couldn't dodge it and was attacked. Tyr was scared for Bella after that. Bella hit the wall and couldn't move. Sirius looked over and saw that she was still alive. But Charlotte was at this time telling the girl to stop. And that's not going to work. The scorpion didn't stop there, and with its tail headed to attack Sirius. And he realized that this time it was here. Sirius suddenly managed to dodge, but used his sword to defend himself. He realized just how long the tail had to be to hit the wall. And he realized that the level of this Warcraft boss surpassed the most outstanding bosses in all aspects. Amazing. Shatil was saying at this moment that she had such a good and tender feeling, and it was too wonderful for her. The system showed at once that the arousal level was already at 95%. Sirius continued to fight, but suddenly he saw a scorpion attacking him from behind. He immediately realized that things were bad, but he doesn't pay attention to it. His claws are on the attack. It's too late. There's no escape. He'll have to take a hit. Shatil had the guy under her feet the whole time, and her face was so red that she couldn't keep her feet up. Scorpius caught Sirius and pushed him right up against the wall. But he saw he had succeeded. He stopped him. Sirius used his techniques and said this was the meeting for them, and this was the one he gave him, and cut him into small pieces with his sword. Scorpion couldn't help himself and fell in battle. The warriors shouted that the captain had pumped up his level and was so strong. He knocked the Warcraftian boss to the ground with one punch. Their captain is now definitely a rank A. Shatil was still excited, and the system was showing that it was already at 98%. The warriors on the other side were screaming that they had overthrown the boss of Warcraft. That's what they gave him. And it was all thanks to the mighty strength of the captain. And now they don't have to fear the Warcraft bosses. And they'll always call their captain. He'll show them all more. Sirius only realized that this boss was kind of weak in general. He could still win. Sirius told the warriors to spread out. He's going to sort this out for himself and let them all take a look at it and see the real power of a rank A captain. Shadil thought, what was wrong with her and what was even going on? And doing these things to a real human body actually seems to her. She just needs to calm down. But Charlotte was also surprised and saw that she had such a flexible body, especially her legs. If she kept pushing against his body, it wouldn't hold up. Charlotte shouted to the girl that this wouldn't happen to him. OT opened his mouth and licked her legs again. Charlotte started making strange noises, but Shadil didn't like it and said she didn't even want to hear his disgusting noises. It worked out so smoothly that Charlotte took her points to a new level and could fight her. But Sirius saw in the moment of battle that he was starting again, and the scorpion is ready to finish him off. But Shadil didn't stop there and felt an excitement she couldn't stop. The moment Sirius attacked, suddenly the scorpion stopped his sword attack. He was surprised and immediately used the holy vortex. The warriors shouted for all to see. There it was, the captain's signature skill. Sirius didn't stop and launched a strong attack. After finishing off the scorpion, everyone was surprised. The warrior was saying that their captain happens to be so strong. He disposed of the giant Warcraft boss to the point of unconsciousness. He's so loud. The warrior shouted to the captain to give this Warcraft boss one last decisive blow. Sirius said that the Warcraft boss that had been attacking the people gathered here so mercilessly had been defeated, but all the while Charlotte was gaining strength and increasing his points. While the guys on the other side were fighting to the death, Sirius continued to fight and thought, is the scorpion really that strong? Shatil enjoyed these moments, but suddenly wondered why was it so noisy outside? She wondered if Lord Nay had died. Suddenly Shatil jumped out of her boyfriend's embrace and thought, is this really the end? And she seemed to have forgotten why she was here, and she had a request from Lord Nay himself. She should hurry up and get rid of all the people here as soon as possible. But she kept her guard up and believed that she would succeed. But Charlotte took it to the next level and he asked the girl, does she want to continue this battle? Shatil thought, how could this be? But not long ago, he certainly didn't feel like this. But he's the same as Lord Nay. That's the terrifying pressure coming from him. Shatil suddenly wondered if she needed to keep fighting him, as she had before. But Charlotte had gotten even stronger and wanted to fight her. Suddenly, Shatil decided that she needed to run. She immediately turned around and headed down the mountain to run. Charlotte thought she'd run off somewhere. Should she chase after her? Or could she just call it a day? But really, he only hoped that Boss Nay's place as the boss of the blood of the gods wouldn't take so much of his strength. The warriors shouted all the time that the captain is invincible, and he's so strong. The captain is here even if they had trouble with the dungeon. Bella ran to save her friend. But suddenly a passage opened in front of her, and Charlotte appeared. Bella asked Charlotte if he was okay. He didn't hurt himself in there. Is he okay? Charlotte replied that he was. Bella told him that he had dust all over his body, though he looked fine. Maybe there was something wrong with his body? Maybe they'll go to the squad's medical team and get it checked out. Charlotte told Bella that he was fine. She could take his word for it. Bella told him that if he suddenly felt ill, he should let her know right away. Charlotte said he knew everything. Sirius took over and yelled for everyone to listen to him and follow him. He's going to show what real power is. He's going to kill that boss. The warriors cheered and shouted that the captain was powerful. Sirius thought that the danger rank of this dungeon wasn't even C. He's at rank D, barely pulling it off. And this time he captured a rank D dungeon and got a rank C reward for it. And the fact that he defeated the Warcraft boss himself promises him a good reputation as well. And when they return to the Daredevil Guild, he will definitely be rewarded for killing the boss. Cheryl came to Lord Nay and told him that a very powerful man was approaching them. She has no way of knowing what kind of method he used. Originally, he was quite weak, and then everything changed dramatically and he became extremely powerful. She asked Lord Nay to be careful. Nay asked the girl what she had been instructed to do. Shatil replied that no one was to be led into the blood of the gods, and if they did, to kill them. Nay told her to then be kind and bother to explain what she was doing here. Shatil tried to explain herself, but Lord Nay killed her. Shortly after his attack, there was an explosion and Nay said he wasn't going to listen to her excuses. Shatil fell to the ground and didn't move. Nay tossed her to all the other bodies he'd finished off earlier. Nay said she was just becoming fuel for the fire. But Shadil thought at this time that she did not wish to die here. Nay said after so many years, a near-perfect job of sacrificing humans and monsters for fuel. Soon, the blood of the gods finally began to boil. But suddenly, there was a large explosion that showed the way straight to him, who's so brave and fearless that they decided to come here. Sirius replied that it was the brave ones who could give him a good scare themselves. And that's who walked in on him. The system immediately told the guy that the blood of the gods would help him get rid of the toxins in his body. Nay said, so this guy is the one who, at first glance, seems different. The one Shada was talking about, Charlotte asked, would that help him recover and heal? Sirius took control and told everyone to listen to him. He ordered that no one should perform any action that wasn't shown to him personally. He would kill this boss from a level C dungeon. The warriors screamed at the captain to kill him and let all of Warcraft know the true firepower of the human race. Charlotte looked around and said that liquid there was the blood of the gods. But suddenly Nay used a seal that would protect the place. The warriors shouted to the captain to run and destroy it. Sirius, as a true captain himself, pounced on the boss to fight him. Sirius said that everyone should experience the captain's terrifying aura. But Nay didn't run away and showed his finger, with which he attacked the enemy. Sirius couldn't handle such a strong attack, and his bone began to shatter. Sirius simply flew backwards, away from the attack. The warriors were surprised and couldn't believe that the captain couldn't handle him. Sirius couldn't fight back and pressed himself against the wall from the attack. The warriors approached the captain and asked if he was all right. Nay started laughing and said that was the strongest person she was talking about. Shadil really isn't capable of anything. Sirius was surprised that the boss's strength couldn't be that good. He had damaged his level A defense with just one of his punches, and he wasn't so weak, as it turned out, but he was lucky he still had the level S protection his brother had given him underneath. He could have just been killed. The warriors approached the captain and asked if he was all right, but they said the captain's defenses were tainted. Sirius thought, what's wrong with this dungeon? Why do Warcraft bosses have such a big difference in power level? He's afraid that there's no way to fight directly. So in this case, he'd best work on the strength of their squad. That's the only way they'll be able to defeat this Warcraftian boss. And when he loosens his grip once again, he will direct his attack at him again. And then his chances of victory will be greatly improved. Sirius turned to everyone and told them to listen to his commands. He ordered immediately that everyone should load their bows. They all need to show what they are really capable of. Tyr told the captain that a mindless attack directed entirely without any thoughtful course of action could result in unnecessary casualties. They can still use that past tactic with the big shield in front. Sirius asked the warrior, does he doubt his plan and the effectiveness of his actions? Does he also want to disobey his orders? Tyr replied to the captain that no, absolutely not. Sirius told him to then stop this nonsense and do as they say. He's the captain, after all, and let him just do what he asks him to do. It's no big deal. Sirius told everyone to pull themselves together and not to worry. He would stand to the last and would always remain their staunch supporter. Sirius took over and shouted to his warriors to attack. Nay said that their flesh and blood wasn't even good for the fire. They weren't worthy of it. How pathetic they all were. And he wishes them all to know that between humans and monsters, there is an extremely huge difference. Nay used all his strength and a firestorm that he directed at all the enemies in front of him. But Charlotte managed to escape and grabbed Bella and Tyr after him. He saved their lives so he wouldn't lose his loyal partners. Sirius miraculously managed to survive as well, but his sword he was holding melted from the fire. Nay asked the captain, hadn't he said he wanted him to experience its terrible power? Sirius realized that there was nothing he could do. It was time to run away from here, lest he die here. Sirius continued to address those left alive and shouted for them to listen to his orders. It was time to retreat. Tyr became very angry and called the captain an insolent fool, for he had previously told him not to act like that. But suddenly Charlotte caught Captain Sirius' hand and told them all in the crew that he would always remain their staunch supporter no matter what happened. And his battle with his boss isn't over. And he knows now that Sirius isn't going anywhere. Sirius was repeating again that he's the captain, and a guy has to do what he's told. And if he wants to stay here and die, let him stay, and he doesn't need to be involved. Nay said they had brazenly barged into his cave, and now they were going to escape? Sirius shouted to him that the boss was behind him and would direct a light wave at them now. Sirius realized that he couldn't pull his arm out. And why did he have such a strong grip? Charlotte said the boss was already aiming in their direction, but Sirius asks him what he's doing and let him let go of his hand already. He orders him to let go, and here you have to think about what he's doing. Sirius realized that he couldn't beat the boss, but that didn't mean he couldn't beat him, and immediately aimed his fist straight at Charlotte's armor. But Charlotte grabbed his arm and flipped him the other way. Sirius was in so much pain that he started to scream. Charlotte told Sirius that as a conscientious captain, he must keep his word. Charlotte tossed him in the boss's direction and told him to be a reliable and staunch supporter of his squad. Let him stop the boss's attack with himself and cover his allies with his body. And that's what a true captain means. Sirius opened his eyes and saw the fire attack flying straight at him. No one helped him, and he stopped it with his body. Charlotte looked over and said it was his turn now. Bella suddenly told her brother that she wished she could stay here. Tyr replied that he would stay too and fight monsters. Bella told him that he shouldn't. She was staying because of Charlotte. Tyr said he knew. He's a first-class B. He will only stay to destroy the Warcraft boss. He will never back down. And he doesn't want any more orders from that idiot. NEI was saying at the time that when he saw his power, he didn't even run away. And it turns out this guy has high expectations for his powers. Charlotte didn't waste any time and executed an instant kick. But Nay couldn't dodge and was injured. Nay said that was an impressive speed. Charlotte shouted that he was already on his way to the antidote of the blood of the gods. Nay suddenly wondered and asked why he was running down the aisle. So this boy's goal is not to kill him, but something else entirely? Or maybe he wants to get the blood of the gods, the boss thought? Charlotte was running and screaming that just a little more, and he would have had it all. Nay was telling them that they were vile people, and he wouldn't let them, so they wouldn't even come near his altar. Tang saw at the moment of attack that the enemy's weak point had opened up, and immediately used his strongest attack. But Nay turned around and just with both hands caught them, and said the guy was really fast, and immediately attacked him so he wouldn't get close to the altar. Bella yelled at him not to even think about attacking Charlotte, and tried to attack him once more so he wouldn't get in his partner's way. Nay didn't stop and attacked with a fire attack, but Charlotte managed to dodge and the enemy missed. Charlotte saw the altar in front of him and jumped right into it and saw that he was almost there, but suddenly he collapsed in front of the altar. Charlotte said there it was, his antidote. He had finally found it. After all this time, he slowly tried to walk down the aisle, but felt a magical barrier standing there. Touching the barrier triggered a trap, and he was thrown several meters backwards. He himself didn't even expect it. NEI said he drew this magical barrier with his own hands, and as long as he's alive, no one can get through it. Charlotte said, of course, it couldn't be that simple. It was impossible to take away the antidote of the blood of the gods without any effort. And now there's nothing left for him to do but fight the boss. But when he turned around, he saw the legs and said there's something inside. Nay waved his stick and told his enemies to get the hell out of here. And they're clearly overestimating their abilities. Bella and her brother failed and were injured by the boss's attack. Charlotte suddenly saw that the very same boss girl who had just escaped was in the cave. Didn't she come back? Isn't she dead? But what had she turned into? Shatil told the boy that she was begging him not to utter a sound. Nay said he wanted a quiet death. Once he kills all their pests, he will break into their city, and afterward will summon his anger. Charlotte turned around and saw that Bella was in danger. Charlotte decided to help the girl and left her a mushroom when he left. Shatil saw it and realized that it was a mushroom with a blossoming power effect. Charlotte ran to save Bella, while Shatil went out and got a mushroom to eat and gain strength. Shatil ate this mushroom, and Sathema immediately revealed that the demon girl named Shatil had improved the skill of loving a brave man, and all the conditions for getting a new weapon have been met. And now Charlotte can choose her weapon. But suddenly, he stopped abruptly from the choice in front of him. The system said it was a detailed explanation of the rules of use. Tyr yelled to Bella that he would hold him off, and she would run away from here sooner. Bella replied that she wouldn't, and she feels like she broke her leg, and he himself needs to run away before it's too late. Charlotte was pretty pissed off and asked, "How much more can we do?" He had people to save. He didn't have time to listen to this control system nonsense. Let him give him his weapon already, preferably as soon as possible. The system said that a detailed explanation of the rules of use was skipped, and now let him take one card. Charlotte took one of the cards and looking at his hand saw that he had gotten a huge sword. The system said he had gotten a weapon, a divine sword of special clothing explosion power. Charlotte threw his sword at him and asked the boss how he felt about this twist. Charlotte told him to see what kind of sword he had now. But suddenly Ney turned around and just caught the sword with his bare hands. Ney started laughing at him and said he was tricked. And this is the most common fake. And now he's his only target. He's a man with incredibly powerful strength and agility, but his abilities are like a cockroach, and that was too close. And now they're going to see how he can hide. Charlotte turned to him and told him not to underestimate him. He didn't say he was going into hiding. Charlotte took the sword back and slashed the boss's arm. Nei asked, what was he even capable of? Let him face it, even if he did his best, it still wouldn't leave a wound on his body either. That's the difference between humans, mere mortals, and the great invincible bosses of Warcraft. Suddenly Ney didn't notice as his clothes began to tear. Looking at his body, he asked, where did his clothes go? Tyr was surprised and said Charlotte left the boss unclothed. Charlotte said that this Warcraft boss was really strong. Ney asked the guy, what kind of dirty thoughts does he have? What kind of magic is he using? How dare he use that skill on a Warcraft boss? If it were up to him, he'd have wiped him out by now, and left only the bones he used to heat the place. Charlotte didn't stop there and rushed to attack. But Ney dodged and the boy missed. Charlotte realized that his earlier attack had hit her in the palm of her hand, and her clothes burst from above. And in other words, we need to do it again. He would be able to throw off her clothes from below if he attacked her legs, and then he'll drop her mask, and then the last thing left to do is kill her. All he has to do is get close to the boss and use a quick slaughter. She can't get away. He's definitely going to get hit. The system told him that the current magic power was only enough to use quick slaughter 6 times. Charlotte listened and said what a shitty skill. Not effective at all. The system asked him, does he want to disable this skill? Charlotte replied that he didn't, and for that matter, he would try it that way. The system told him that the quick massacre was on. Charlotte came at him with all speed, but Ney jumped out to keep him from hitting him. Charlotte was angry because he missed again. Nei thought at that moment, why did that scumbag keep aiming for her legs? The clothes on top, already bursting. He wants to pull his skirt off too. Charlotte got closer and decided to attack again. Ney said he was a dirty pervert, and raising his foot he kicked Charlotte right in the head, and he flew back against the wall. Charlotte decided to use his sword and stop the fall. He said it hurt, and that boss almost broke his nose. But Charlotte said it was nothing compared to his body melting from the toxins. He decided it was nothing and poisoned himself to attack again. Ney saw that he wasn't just going to leave him alone and used a beam of fire attack. Charlotte said 10 seconds had passed. Ney said the bastard dodged his attack. The system told the guy that the reload was complete and immediately applied a quick slash and aimed the attack straight at his legs. Charlotte said, now they'll see how he dodges at such close range, and unleashed a mighty attack on the legs. Charlotte suddenly felt a strange feeling. He threw a punch, but was greatly surprised. Nei said she didn't say she was going to run away. If she wasn't afraid of burning her breasts, she would have attacked harder, and the guy's too slow. She'd have wiped him out a long time ago. Charlotte was greatly surprised to see an attack coming at him, but Charlotte abruptly used the momentum and dodged the attack. The system told him that quick slaughter was on cooldown, and the skill could not be used. Charlotte got very angry when he heard that the quick slaughter was still on cooldown. For him, those 10 seconds stretched on forever, and now he has no choice but to go head-on. Charlotte didn't, and retaliated. The force was so great that the warriors couldn't even keep up with the strong wind that had risen. Tyr remembered that Cirrus had repelled the boss attack by going head-on. There was no way that could be. Before the expedition, his total combat score was only F rank. But in a battle of such a level as a B-ranked fighter, it is completely useless. Charlotte felt at the moment of attack that the attribute of this sword was simply amazing. Charlotte started laughing and said that now he could easily fend off his attacks and dodge his attacks. Her attacks are not scary for him. Ney told him he was right. She really isn't easy to kill him. but she can easily kill a woman with a wounded leg and aimed her attack right at her. Charlotte didn't stop and immediately applied a quick slash. Suddenly her finger fell to the ground, and the guy managed to cut her open. Charlotte realized it was actually her. Too slow. Nay realized that stupid people are always heroic. That's why it's better to attack them from behind. NEI didn't stop and used the fire attack again. And he had been fooled again, and now he couldn't handle it. Charlotte realized in a moment that he wasn't going to make it in time to run and accept, but the system was blocked. Suddenly Charlotte used a quick massacre. But the guy's defenses were shattered and Bella was greatly surprised. Bella realized that her armor was shattered. Charlotte said, finally getting there in time. But suddenly something began to crumble near them. Nay got angry and said he reflected again. But suddenly she realized that she had been so engrossed in the fight that she had forgotten to put wood in the fire to keep the demon god's blood warm. And now all her efforts would be for naught if she didn't deal with the temperature of the altar now. She'll have to wait another 100 years. But it all happened so fast that Bella started to say that she felt weird. She felt really hot. The system said it had a stirring rate of 91%. Charlotte asked Bella how she was doing. Bella took his head with both hands and began to pull it toward her. Finally, she tried to kiss him. She was burning hard and wanted to stop everything, for she was in love with Charlotte, who didn't realize it yet. At 8 years old, Bella pushed a guy and asked him what he was looking at. Had he never seen a beautiful woman before? And why is he following her? Does he want to kiss the beautiful lady? Charlotte stepped aside and replied that he didn't want to. Tyr asked Bella what she was doing. Bella thought she was just about to kiss Cirrus. Her body was moving on its own. She even stuck her tongue out already, in the middle of the battle, and now it's a shame for her. Tyr tells Bella that her face is red. She's still sweating. Is she not in control of her body? And she must be. Otherwise, she wouldn't be acting like this. NEI at this time said that once the demon god's blood cooled down, it would be another 100 years before it boiled over, and she doesn't want to wait that long again. And this time, she must completely burn the demon god's blood dry. She used her magic to take all the dead bodies and sent them all to the antidote that is nearby and lived for many years. Charlotte saw this and said that she wanted to completely burn the demon god's blood dry, and now it's his duty to stop it. The boss is incredibly fast. It's unlikely he'll be able to hit it, unless he increases his strength. Charlotte proceeded to increase to the point where the boss would no longer be able to fend off attacks. NEI was saying at this point that she put some wood on the fire. It would be enough to raise the temperature of the altar to its maximum. Charlotte tells Bella that he's figured out how they can beat the boss and he needs her help. Charlotte said as long as they are with her. And so his power will increase and he will defeat the boss. Tyr became very angry and thought how this guy could say such vulgar things with a serious face. Charlotte said it would not be easy for her, but he was asking her. The system showed at this point that her agitation rate was 93%. Tyr pulls his hand away and says that's complete nonsense. He just wants to take advantage of Bella. They are in the middle of a battle, and he still has time to think dirty thoughts. Tyr told Bella not to believe him, but Bella told the guy to believe what he said. Bella goes up to him and tells him that she's very embarrassed. Don't let him misunderstand her. She's only doing this to beat the boss, and she didn't really feel like doing anything like that to him. But Charlotte remembered how she told him before. Bella told him earlier that after she kissed him, she would take care of him. Then Charlotte replied that he didn't want to play that game. Tyr stood next to him and yelled at Bella not to do it in front of him. The system said that Tyr was furious. At that moment, Charlotte remembered everything and punched her in the face. He stepped back and started screaming that he was on the verge of death. But Bella wondered at that moment why he had pushed her away. The system said the rank had increased by 1. All stats increased by 5,000 points. Charlotte thought with surprise, by 5,000 points. It's definitely because of Tyr. Thank goodness he doesn't have to touch Bella and lose that horrible memory. Charlotte tells Bella that since it's not easy for her, they better not do it. And now he can beat the boss. Bella told him to stop and asked, what if he still couldn't? Didn't he need her help? Charlotte turned around and replied that it wasn't necessary. Bella asked him why. Did he not like her at all? Tyr tells Bella that he can see that Charlotte is stronger than him, so she likes him. But he's still going to ask. Bella replied that it was the same thing again. Charlotte headed to attack and realized he had to activate the finishing move, He had to hit the legs and the head at the same time. He had almost gotten hit in the legs earlier, but now all his stats have been increased by 5,000 points. He will be able to hit if he finds the right moment to use a quick slaughter. Nay went to the vessel and said there was no connection and asked why the temperature was still so low. If she doesn't get this fixed soon, the temperature will start dropping rapidly. Suddenly it occurred to her, and she said she was using these pathetic people to add some warmth. Nay threw her garment off her chest and told them to be proud, and they would all become firewood for her sacrifice. And for her, it's the highest reward she can offer them. And she realized it was time to unleash her full power. She turned to her highnesses and commanded them to have them kill all the humans. Charlotte stood below her at this time and saw the huge attack and the vessel she would send straight at them. Charlotte tried to stop, but Nay's attack was closing in on him. The system told him that the mania points were rapidly expending. Charlotte tried various ways to stop her, but he was unsuccessful. The system showed that he had used up everything, and now he couldn't use any skills because of low magic points. Nay told him that his magic power was depleted, and now the fight is over. Charlotte replied to her that it wouldn't be. By this time, Bella came in and said he needed her help, and he was a very good man. She picked him up and held him to her chest. The system told him that Tyr had a broken heart. Bella realized that she'd said her heart was broken a long time ago, hadn't she? Ever since she was a child. And that hadn't changed. The system immediately showed that Charlotte's rank had increased to 5. He began to glow and said such a surge of rising energy. The system told him that all stats had increased by 27,500 points. Nay saw a bright light and said that it was impossible, and he can't fight back. NEI said that no matter how much his strength has increased, he's still just a human. And in front of monsters, he's just a bug. Charlotte had attacked her unexpectedly and was ready to finish her off once and for all. But Nay said she could fend off any attack he made, too. But Charlotte came through like a speed machine and again used quick carnage. Nay was very angry and said that he had cut her face. The system said she was and unlocked the Ulba Divine Sword Descending Holy Sword. Nay screamed that he was a loon and asked him how he dared to mess up his face. She wouldn't forgive him for that. NEI tried to use the same attack again and put all her power into it to finish off the bug. But Charlotte wasn't intimidated by that, and he was willing to take it all in and fight him on 1 or 2, and then try the potion that would cure him. Nay screamed that she would destroy them all. Charlotte stood still and waited for a moment to respond with the same attack. Nay started destroying everything in her path, and the attack was so strong that everything around them was shaking. But Charlotte fought back and attacked her with his attack, which earned him a victory over her. The system told the guy that it would take 20 seconds to recharge for the Descending Holy Sword. Charlotte approached the vessel that the seal was still in effect. He asked why the altar was still working. Nay stood up and asked him, did he think he had one? She wouldn't let the wretched humans touch the demon god. The system said it would reload in 9 seconds. Charlotte told her he would finish her in 9 seconds. Suddenly, he heard Tyr yelling to Bella. Charlotte turned around and saw that she was critically low on health, on the verge of death. Nay got to his feet and said he would only get to the altar over his dead body. And now they would see who was who, monster or human. Charlotte didn't choose to fight her and approached Bella to save her. He took Tyr with him too and started to run away. Charlotte walked out of their room and realized that they had really escaped. Humans are incredibly stupid. He ordered the system to open the map and find the shortest way out, and he needs to get them to the guild hospital as soon as possible. Suddenly, a scorpion appeared in front of him. Charlotte was very angry and was ready to finish him off, too. But Bella remembered how the boys had laughed at her. They were saying that she had been withdrawn again. He's so ugly that no one wants to make out with her, and her looks are only to fend off crows in the vegetable garden instead of a scarecrow. But one of the boys caught Charlotte by the arm and told him to stay back. She'd give him something, and he's going to be a freak too. And they better go and play basketball. Charlotte used a quick slash against the scorpion and walked through it. Charlotte remembered his childhood again and said that the game wasn't over yet. He's a boy and she's a girl. He'll be a daddy and she'll be a mommy, so he has to take care of her. Charlotte saved their lives and told Bella that everything would be okay. But Nay was standing in front of the altar at the time, saying just a little more and she wouldn't let the temperature drop. Nay said this is what the altar would be like, and this guy would be her sacrifice. Meanwhile, Charlotte was in big trouble, for he was attacked by a dragon that spewed fire. But Nay appealed to the demon gods and said that she could no longer serve them. But Charlotte wasn't stopping yet and used quick slaughter against the dragon again. Suddenly Charlotte wondered and thought, why had his divine sword vaporized? The system told him that the enemy had been defeated and the sword had returned to the system, and now the gun will be back in 12 hours. Charlotte didn't care because he was almost at the exit. The other warriors were saying that they finally made it out, and they were telling Captain Sirius that they had made it. Sirius realized that it was very close, and he almost died in that dungeon. He said that everything hurt and even his dragon scale armor was shattered, all because of that weird Charlotte, but he should be killed by the boss by now. Suddenly the boys turned around and saw that Charlot had caught up with them. The warrior turned to the captain and said that Charlotte was still alive. Sirius turned around and asked in surprise, "What?" Sirius took up his sword and said he was quietly following them, so he got out. He asked Charlotte how dare he disobey his orders and defect, and as captain, he hereby declares that he is no longer a member of their team. Let him not even think about using their medication to sustain his worthless life. And his life ends right now. He's going to execute him. But Charlotte disobeyed him and flew into his legs right in the head. Charlotte said he didn't have time for chit-chat. The warrior asked him how dare he treat the captain like that. The warrior walked up to Sirius and said that Charlotte had only punched the captain and he was passed out, and we need to get him to the hospital as soon as possible. Charlotte managed his urge and brought them to the hospital. The doctor admitted the sick and shouted that urgent help was needed, and have them quickly get everything ready for surgery. Charlotte sighed and said he was finally there. Now he has to get back to the dungeon. He's one step away from getting the blood of the gods for the antidote. Something unexpected was happening in the dungeon at this time. The potion that was being prepared suddenly began to boil. Suddenly, a big, huge monster came out of it, which apparently took the place of the dungeon boss. Shotl sat in the rock, all this while thinking, what did Nay achieve by sacrificing herself? The new boss suddenly attacked her, and Shotl became very frightened. She realized that it was a chilling, soul-chilling sensation. It was as if countless needles were stabbing into her bones. The new boss said it was a familiar smell, and she had a familiar feeling, and he really came home. The boss turned to the human world and said he was here again, and it was the demon god Azathoth. Shotl realized to herself that it was too dangerous here, and she must run. But Azathoth smelled the odor and approached the rock. He slowly ran his finger over the rock, and everything started to crumble. The monsters got under it and asked why did the floor explode? And everyone started falling into the abyss. Shotl was able to escape the roundup in an unexpected way and came out right in front of Azathoth. The monsters said they had fallen to the bottom. But suddenly one of them told the others to look up. The monster said the dungeon was destroyed. They're out in the open. But who would do such a thing? Did Lord Nye really do it? But one of the monsters said no. There must be someone more powerful. Could this one be the one in front of them? They turned to Lord Naya, but Azathoth replied that she was not alive. Azathoth said he needed a new servant. The monsters were surprised to hear that Lord Nain was dead, and even asked if they should run away. One of the monsters kneeled down and said that the monsters were a bloodline that had been admiring great power for many years, and he's willing to follow someone more powerful than Lord Nain, and asks the new lord to make him his servant. The others started asking to join the team. They were willing to fight to the death for him. Azathoth looked at it and said it was disgusting. He summoned his monsters, which he himself had created from that potion. Azathoth said he didn't want any strange minions. Shotl had been kneeling in front of him the whole time. Azathoth looked at her and said she was pretty. Have her raise her head and open her mouth. Shotl began to cry and obeyed the order and opened her mouth. She released the earth from her hands and ordered her to drink. Shotl suddenly began to feel a rush. She realized that her body was healing, and she was getting better. Azathoth said that her body must feel good. His blood could heal any disease, increase stamina, and strengthen immunity. And along with that, it could give unprecedented pleasure. Azathoth told her it was getting evening, and have her find a cleaner room and wait for him there. At this time in guild headquarters, a guy named Darren had Sirius head pressed against the table and was asking him how come the mission was a failure. Sirius replied that he was sorry. He would have to figure something out. If he lost his position as captain, he would have to audit all of the guild's remaining assets. And if it turns out they were sneaking around selling guild resources, Darren yelled at him to shut up. Darren told the boy that he had said earlier that someone on his team had violated an order. Sirius replied that yes, his name was Charlotte. Darren looked at his card and suggested that they write it all off on him and sentenced to execution for desertion. At this time, Charlotte reached the dungeon and was surprised, asking how did it explode? He ran up to the altar and thought about his antidote. But looking better, he saw that the altar was completely empty. The room where Shatil was in was very bright and open sky. She sat on a rock and waited for her lord. But suddenly Azathoth came, and she asked him not to do that. Suddenly, she began to feel that something soft was touching her back. Shatil pulled out of his embrace and stepped aside. Azathoth asked her what was wrong. She didn't like the hug. Shatil asked her how she was doing. Azathoth replied that there was nothing surprising about it. At night, she loses her power and takes her true form as a woman. And at night, she must protect her. Let her kill anyone who is hostile to her. And she need not think of trying to kill her or escape. Drinking her blood in the afternoon allowed her to tinker with her own blood. She could control her body through her blood and could make it burst at any second. So she must be an obedient girl. Charlotte had been running around the rooms all this time and saw that they were all empty. Charlotte started running in different directions and searching. He said there was still hope. The blood of the gods must be somewhere in the city. Charlotte turned to the system and told it to open a map for him, and he decided he would search every corner. Azathoth said that she didn't want to end up like this, but she has no choice. Her heart is sealed in the Hero Guild. He ain't in the best shape right now, so he turns into a weak person at night. But after any night, there's always daylight. And after she regains her power, she will go straight to the guild headquarters and regain her heart. And when that happens, every monster, no matter if it's day or night, will bow before her might. Suddenly, Shatil heard something and said there was someone here, and she's going to go and check it out. Azathoth told her to stand 5 kilometers away from her during the battle. If she steps out beyond that radius, it will decide she has decided to run and melt her body. Shatil replied that she understood everything. At this time, the system told the guy that the blood of the gods in Lord Nay's dungeon. Charlotte said she's definitely here, and this is the last room left, and the blood of the gods must be here. But at that moment, Shatil was waiting for him behind the wall. She took a moment to attack, but Charlotte sensed it and dodged. Shatil said it was him again. Azathoth lay in the room and couldn't cope and asked what's going on. Why is her body shaking so much? But she knew that only happened when she was close to her heart. Shatil told the boy that Lord Nay was dead. Why did he come back? Let him better run away before the day came. Charlotte answered her that she had regained enough strength to fight. Did she enjoy his mushroom-flavored treat? Shatil blushed and replied that it wasn't tasty at all. The most disgusting mushroom she had ever eaten. Let her lose it from here. The system showed that the degree of agitation was 71%. Charlotte said she was blushing. He didn't expect her to be happy to see him. Shatil suddenly lunged at him with her legs and tried to kick him, but the boy was in time and dodged again. The girl told him not to talk nonsense, and she's not happy to see him at all. She has no good feelings for him. Shatil kept throwing punches and got in the guy's face, but also said that her feelings for the man was disgust. Looking under her foot, she saw that the guy was no longer there. She realized that she had punched him in the face and he had run away anyway. Charlotte yelled that he had urgent business and they would chat later. He felt that the blood of the gods was right outside that door, and he could feel it. Suddenly, the doors opened in front of him and Azathoth appeared. Charlotte was surprised to see that there was a human here. Shatil asked Azathoth why she was out, but the mistress answered nothing and just waved her hand. Azathoth touched the boy and Charlotte was immediately in pain. She looked at his body and saw that her heart was inside him. She wondered why it was in a man's body. Charlotte had told her to let it in. And what was she going to do? Charlotte touched it and saw that the system showed it was the blood of the gods. He asked how did his antidote become human? Meaning, he immediately lifted her hand and saw that the cut was still standing. Charlotte grabbed her hand with her teeth and realized that her blood was the antidote. Azathoth blushed a lot after that, and it even felt good. The system told the guy it didn't help, and he only had 101 days to live. Charlotte asked why her blood wasn't helping. Azathoth realized that blood wouldn't help as long as she was in the man's body. Shotil stepped into the fight and shouted at him to let go of her hand. Charlotte reacted sharply and stepped back. Azathoth looked at the guy and realized that her heart had been consumed by the man and turned into essence in his rotten body. She wanted to regain her power very badly, and she would forcibly absorb him back into her body, and then his body will turn into a pool of blood. This is the punishment for using her power without permission. Charlotte asked, could it be the other liquid of her thal? Then that would work. But suddenly he said it didn't matter. Better to get out of here and think it over calmly. Suddenly there was a monster, and she was saying she felt its presence 1,000 miles away. And it was a sensation that drove her senses crazy, and everything awakened within her. And the bell she gave her, she didn't take it off for a minute. That monster was called Gon's boss. Ghana said she's already proven her loyalty. Maybe she'll eat her right now. That way she'll be all hers. Azathoth suddenly approached her and started running away. Ghana was very surprised that someone had stolen her food and became very upset. Charlotte didn't leave her here and immediately flew out the window with her. Charlotte hadn't really expected the boss to show up out of nowhere, and he hates it. Need to get her to safety for starters. Ghana wouldn't leave him alone and screamed at the guy to bring her back. She chased him and told him he couldn't escape. After a while, Charlotte stopped and said that he had finally gotten away from that monster. Azathoth asked the guy where did he bring her. Charlotte replied that to the Hero Guild, in Zone Z, in his house. Azathoth rejoiced and realized that it was even easier this way. After she got her power back into her body, she would be able to kill directly, and he would pay for stealing her heart. Suddenly, unexpectedly, she hugged him and called him a dear hero. Azathoth said she was cursed by a terrible monster. If she doesn't find a partner soon, she will die, and now she's asking for a hero to save her. Charlotte says he is a noble and honest hero. He would never take advantage of someone's vulnerability. Azathoth climbed on top of him and said he was so brave and her body hurt so much. He has to save her. Charlotte was angry and couldn't believe how he'd gotten himself into this. He knows in his heart that he could never do that. Never take advantage of someone's weakness, but otherwise his conscience would torment him. But as a hero, his honor tells him that the people who need his help are suffering. He can't just sit idly by. Azathoth turned to Charlotte and kissed her. He realized that he was ready for anything, and let him experience this pain himself from the depths of his heart. Azathoth decided that she would suck out all the energy and regain her strength, and she would destroy each of them one by one. Suddenly Charlotte saw that she had a tail. He suddenly panicked and didn't realize that she was human, but in a moment he thought hard and saw that there were tails behind and in front. He immediately started pushing her away and yelling. Charlotte couldn't come to her senses and asked why she had it too. Azathoth suddenly came up to him and replied that he was brave, and he had said he would help her. Azathoth realized it was getting light, and her body was starting to change. She asked, he hadn't changed his mind, had he? Suddenly Charlotte looked to the side and saw a strange animal. Azathoth asked him who it was. Suddenly the animal turned into a human and was telling her master that she was hungry and wanted to eat. She's going to starve to death. Charlotte said he felt like his help was more important to her right now. He promised to help her first. The girl was feeling really bad at this time, and to her this nest was so small she can't even turn around. Charlotte asked Azathoth if she was hungry. He would have something ready in a jiffy. He headed for the kitchen and started the fire. Charlotte suddenly thought about it and decided that he would deal with the food later. But what would he do now? What if he doesn't save her and she actually dies? He can't think of anything, and he was indeed going to go with her, but the mere thought of it made him lose his temper. Azathoth realized the same thing, that she couldn't wait any longer and let him get her energy back, or else she would come up behind him and force him to do it. Charlotte started to run away and yell for her to let him go. Charlotte says he's had enough, and he needs to save her first. Azathoth felt that her body was too weak, and she needed a better way. Charlotte went into the room and saw that the girl had gone into another room. He followed her and saw her lying on the floor drinking. Charlotte saw it and said it was toilet cleaner. How did she drink it? The girl started smiling and replied that it was yummy. Charlotte handed her the food and left her. By then Azathoth had come and said that he had already fed her and now let him help her. Charlotte replied to tell her to calm down and he would get to her now. Azathoth jumped on him and told him that she didn't need his excuses, and she needs to do it right now. The system said the weapon's use time had expired, and the equipment immediately disappeared from his body. The system told him that he still ran outside, covering himself with a flap of cloth, and waved to 33 people. Charlotte yelled to the system that she was an idiot, and he would never do that. The system replied that if he didn't complete the action, he would be exiled to the reverse dimension. Charlotte turned around and saw some strange people staring at him. Charlotte was scared and started screaming. It seemed even creepier now, and wondered how he could cover himself with such a small piece of cloth. It's not long enough to completely cover the body. The whole back will be exposed, and he can't hold it from both sides. He's got to wave his arm around. Charlotte told Azathoth to wait for him here, and he'll go out for a little walk. The girl was greatly surprised and said that people probably went out like that every day. Azathoth realized that it looked like they would have to wait for him all day. The girl asked Azathoth if she would drink. It is very tasty. Azathoth thanked her and replied that she would refuse. Charlotte decided to make a mask and realized that it was all he had to do, and no one would realize it was him if he hid his face. Now he'll run to the kebab area. There's always lots of people there. He'll be up to speed in no time. Ghana did not leave him alone all this time and kept an eye on him. But when she saw him go outside, she wondered where he was going. And besides, she immediately smelled that he was around here somewhere. Charlotte came to his seat and yelled for everyone to look at him and started waving his arms. People started screaming at once that there's a pervert here, and he must be sick, and let them catch him immediately. Charlotte stood still and shouted for them to look at him. But the people didn't leave it at that and started running after him. Suddenly the girls in the room felt that someone was here. Shatil slowly walked through the window and said that she had finally found her. Shatil said the bravest of heroes live in this town. If they get caught, they'll be in trouble, and they'd better get out of here fast. Azathoth replied that it was almost morning. There was no point in hiding. Let her find and bring this man, and as soon as she rises, let her blood spill on the ground. That's how she'll find her. By then, she'll be back to her old self. Shatil went out to search and wondered what would become of the man when Azathoth took his usual form. But she assumes he will become mush. Shatil suddenly heard strange shouts, and looking she saw a group of people running after Charlotte. Charlot was running away from the guys, and at points asking people how they were doing, but the guys kept up and ran after him to punish him. Charlotte looked at the system and said half of it was already there. But suddenly a monster appeared behind him. Charlotte turned around and saw the monsters. The people were greatly frightened and shouted that it was a monster. Have the civilians evacuated immediately, and we need to call for reinforcements. Charlotte thought the monsters showed up at such an inopportune moment. He'll try to fight his way through the mission. Charlotte suddenly turned to the system. The system told him that use of the system was prohibited during the weapons recovery mission. Everything reverted back to its original F rank. Charlotte was greatly surprised and asked what? The system told him to complete the weapons recovery mission as soon as possible. Suddenly, the microphones in the city turned on and said that monsters have been spotted in the Kona, and they are asking citizens to leave the area. One of the guys suddenly went up on the monster and yelled that he had grabbed its legs and was asking for a friend to throw him a weapon. He's going to finish him off. Charlotte didn't leave him in the lurch and told the guy that he congratulated him and immediately said goodbye. The guy was very surprised and started calling him names. But lastly he asked if the monsters had pulled down his pants. Suddenly a strange monster appeared in front of him, looking right at him. The boy was very frightened and shouted that he had broken free, but it went much easier and better. One of the guild warriors came up and cut the spider in two. Security Captain Kayak himself came to the rescue. He immediately asked, "Are the ranking heroes afraid to teach?" The president of the Charlton Hero Guild said, "Great job. You can say he's been to the battlefield too. Now evacuate him immediately." Kayak told the gentleman that he had nothing to worry about because their security team was with him. But suddenly out of the blue, Ghana came in and screamed what she was feeling. And the man is near. Kayak turned around, grabbing his sword, said for them to secure the deputy and tell the president to stand down. Kayak suddenly swung his sword at her, but Ghana dodged it. She asked him. Was that all he could do? Kayak was greatly surprised that his attack didn't work, and Ghana let out a dirty attack and aimed it at him. The kayak started yelling that it was poisonous, and you shouldn't touch it. Ghana started laughing and said that people are so fragile. She can't even take a drop of poison. The warrior shouted to the captain that he would apprehend the monster. Have them get the president's deputy to safety. Ghana asked the guy, is he trying to hold her back? Let him just try. Charlotte was running at the time and saw that he had one man left, but Ghana was holding Kayak's head in her hands at this time and saying that he was moaning so sweetly. Would he not make any more sounds? Ghana went up to the president and said she hadn't heard enough yet. Zam at that time asked for help and shouted. Charlotte showed up and told her to let him go and shouted to the mate to look at him. The system said the weapons age mission was complete. Charlotte felt empowered and shouted that the clothes were back. He immediately turned to the system, but the system asked him to pick a card. Charlotte didn't look and took the first one he saw. The system showed that the weapon had been selected, and he now had a silent divine finger. And touching the surrounding objects, the touch will be felt by the enemy. And when the enemy cries out with all his heart, then the silent power will come into action. Ghana cried out that this man and asked him where he had hidden Azathoth. Charlotte replied that he wouldn't give Azathoth to her. Ghana said then she would kill him, and she would find him herself as soon as morning came. Charlotte saw her above him and told the system to lock on the target. He applied his gloves and defended himself. Charlotte touched the ground, but Ghana felt someone touching her body at the same time. The system has indicated that the degree of screaming is 12%, and the silent power has been activated. Suddenly, everything underneath her started to collapse, and she didn't realize what was happening. She felt at the end that the guy was touching her breasts, and just as she screamed, an invisible force touched him. It even hurt her a little, and it was all him, a human. Ghana said that her body and mind belonged only to Azathoth. Anyone who touches her other than Azathoth must die. She would not allow such a betrayal of her lord to happen again. The system said that the degree of screaming was directly proportional to the silent power. Ghana said she's about to collect all the poison in her hands. She will bring his corpse to the Lord as an apology. Ghana jumped on him and told him to let the guy die in agony. That's his price for touching her. Charlotte wasn't confused and immediately dodged the first attack, but on the second he fell short and was hit by Gon's claw. But Charlotte was not confused and immediately touched the ground with his hands. Ghana couldn't stand it any longer and began to scream. The system said the degree of screaming was 43%. She couldn't help herself again and started collapsing everything underneath her. Suddenly Charlotte had the feeling that he had touched her armpit. Ghana was already very much pissed off and was even holding her mouth with both hands. She was in a lot of pain, and this attack was much stronger than the previous one. But why was she moaning again? She thought. In fact, she wanted to hold back. And this time he touched her armpit, and she was very ticklish. And it was just for a second, but she actually enjoyed it so much. Only Lord Azathoth could give such pleasure, and it was very strange that a human could do it. She held a bell in her hands and said she was asking Azathoth for forgiveness. How could a normal person have similar thoughts to her? There's definitely something wrong with her. Of course, to her it was disgusting. A human would never compare to it. Ghana clutched her head and screamed, but after a few minutes she said she had now come to her senses and asked if she deserved forgiveness. Charlotte looked and said she was beating herself up. Is she really that crazy? Ghana was telling the guy that he was attacking so strangely, but he still wouldn't defeat her. Suddenly, she grabbed her sword. Charlotte stared and thought it was some weird place to keep a gun. But it didn't matter. Breasts first, then armpits. And if he calculated the trajectory correctly, the blow should now come in the back. Ghana ran after him and asked, is he escaping yet? But it's already too late. Ghana caught up with him and tried to finish the guy off with her weapon. But Charlotte was not confused and immediately stepped aside so that she missed. Charlotte said he's very agile, and she can't get him. Ghana replied that she knew and let out her web. Charlotte was greatly surprised to see the web in front of him. He was trapped and completely immobilized. Ghana told the guy that now he's not running away. And picking up her weapon, she shouted that now he was going to die and went in for the kill. Charlotte released his hand and decided he was going to try again. and he tried the inside of his thigh. Ghana immediately started screaming afterward. She even said that this person was fighting so strangely, but she has to hold on this time. But Charlotte decided not to stop and continued to run his hand along the wall and slowly raise his brush. Ghana couldn't help herself and let out a little scream. The system immediately showed that the degree of screaming was 1%. She suddenly lowered her hand and said she was holding back, and if she didn't scream, his attacks wouldn't work. But raising her head, she saw that there was no one on the wall anymore. Ghana asked at once, "How did he get out?" Charlotte came out after her and said that she told her he couldn't escape. Ghana didn't expect that and was very surprised. Ghana started laughing and replied that it was silly. She had figured out his tactics. He would no longer have a chance to escape. And so now, he would surely die. Ghana decided that she would cover her mouth with a spider web. That way she won't make a sound, and his trick won't work anymore. Charlotte asked her. She felt it on the inside of her thigh, didn't she? Ghana thought the guy was disgusting, and he was too considerate. Charlotte said that means he's right. It fits the proportions of her body. And now they're going to get to the part of the fight where one side gets the upper hand on the other, and he will study her body and find the most sensitive spot. Ghana actually felt his attacks, and it didn't even matter what part of her body. She still wouldn't make a sound. Charlotte prepared himself and began to attack. Ghana felt him coming and began to feel him touching her. She kept repeating to herself that she would not make any moans. Charlotte looked and said, getting no reaction. Ghana suddenly began to blush and realized that this feeling is different. It was like it was coming from the heart. She was telling herself again that she could hold back, and asked Azathoth to watch her hold back. She has not betrayed him. He's the only one in her heart, and that level of pleasure is nothing compared to what he brings. Charlotte suddenly decided to use a different tactic again and asked her how she felt like that. Ghana couldn't even answer him and began to wriggle in front of him. She felt one pleasure, and it was clouding her mind. Zam was watching the battle and said that the monstrous was shaking again. But what was that sound? How did he make her moan? He wants to learn how to do that too. Ghana thought at that moment, how could a person do such a thing? And it felt so good. This pleasure had never felt like this before. She turned to Lord Azathoth again and told him she was losing him. But she pulled herself together and decided that she would stop thinking about it. Ghana said she belongs only to Azathoth, and now she has to pull herself together, and she has no more idle thoughts. Charlotte began to wonder and say that she hadn't screamed again, and I guess the pleasure wasn't enough. Ghana made the poison transform into metal and decided to make the poison into a weapon. And she's not just going to give up in there. Charlotte started attacking again and telling her to enjoy his skills, and was running his hands along the wall. Ghana fell to the ground and couldn't hold back. She felt that this feeling was too strong. She couldn't even move from her seat. Ghana decided that she had to kill him as soon as possible. Otherwise, Lord Azathoth would be gone from her heart. She stayed back and threw her weapon at him. Charlotte was surprised by this, but dodged it. And then Ghana ordered the weapon to release the poison. The poison immediately spread behind the boy. Ghana said that he would definitely not be able to escape in this horrible place. But suddenly she looked and saw that no one was there. She realized that at this close range he wouldn't be able to do anything. And now that his whole body is poisoned with her venom, he'll just dissolve. Charlotte went up on the roof and said she couldn't keep him out with the web, and it won't work with this. Ghana immediately saw that he was up there, and he just jumped on the roof. Charlotte said he wouldn't fall for it a second time. And now it's his turn. Charlotte jumped between the two houses and ran her hands along the wall to make her feel even better. Ghana couldn't help herself again and fell to the ground. She was starting to feel it again. She hoped that she just had to be patient a little longer, and it would stop soon. Ghana couldn't watch and wondered how much longer. And everything happened so fast last time. Why did it need more time now? Make her stop doing that. Ghana turned to Lord Azathoth and said she was too weak. The cobwebs tore, and she began to scream. Ghana screamed that she would eat that man. The system showed at once that the degree of screaming was 100%. Her scream was so strong that the bell shattered into small pieces, and her magic level dropped to 0. Ghana turned into a saber-toothed spider, and the system told the guy that the enemy had been destroyed. and the weapon was returned to the system. Charlotte picked up the spider, and the system said the danger level was 0%. And Conquest was unlocked. And after defeating the boss, he gets his abilities, and soon a poisonous alloy was acquired. Charlotte asked if he could use the poison inside his body as a weapon, and then Azathoth showed up and said the guy was busted. Charlotte was very surprised that she had found him. At this time, Shatil was on the other side, and released the liquid from her finger that Azathoth had told her to release. Immediately after that, Azathoth sensed and disappeared from the room, and appeared in front of Shatila. She showed her appearance and asked where the man was. Shatil answered him that she had lost track of him. Azathoth said that this man has his heart in him. If he doesn't get it back, it will always incarnate into a helpless man at night. And she lost track of him. Suddenly they heard strange screams in the town. Azathoth suddenly had a strange feeling that she should go there. The system told the guy that a new skill was unlocked, placing he could teleport monsters back to their home. Charlotte was surprised and set accommodation. The girl who was in his room suddenly saw a spider in front of her, but Azathoth found the guy and said he got him. Charlotte was surprised, but didn't have time to dodge. Azathoth said he promised to save him, but she ran away. That pisses him off. Charlotte asked, is he really a man? He's a monster, and he lied to him about the curse. And now he wants what? Azathoth answered, for him to fulfill his promise. Charlotte said he wasn't interested in men. Azathoth changed her appearance and asked how about it? The guy turned around and asked what? Azathoth started meowing and asked the guy if he became a cat girl, would he be interested? Charlotte replied that he wouldn't. Charlotte told him that whatever he becomes, he won't be interested. He likes women. Charlotte tried to punch, but Azathoth caught his arm and said that they, humans, didn't like role-playing. He thought they could have some fun, but he turned him down in the end. That's a shame. And now he would have to go to extreme measures then, and licked the guy's fingers. Charlotte jumped up and asked him, did he get up to lick his fingers? Azathoth started to smile and replied that he was so delicious and so sweet. Charlotte tried to escape, but Azathoth shouted at him that let him do what he wanted. He certainly couldn't escape. Azathoth said that he had already maxed out the system a long time ago. If he wants to run, let him run as much as he wants. In the end, the result will be the same. How about trying to use the system to try and reduce his speed? Charlotte replies that he doesn't want to use the system against humans. He's a human too. Azathoth pounced on him and said he would help him experience another dash of pleasure. The blood in his veins is the guy's antidote. Isn't that interesting? He will heal him if he is an obedient boy. Charlotte said that if doing this to him was the only way to get the antidote, he'd rather die. He would never do that to a man. Azathoth told the guy how dare he refuse him. We need to teach him discipline. He'll get it into his body. He will beg him for it himself. Azathoth said his heart, strength, and system would soon return to his master. She suddenly decided to use the power, but it didn't work. Azathoth asked, what's wrong? Where is his magic? The system said it canceled his attack, and all attacks against Charlotte are useless. The system asked the guy if he would sacrifice 50% of his life for a chance to kill Azathoth. Charlotte answered that he would. The system showed him and told him that when Azathoth's target was captured, Azathoth's Oblivion Spear would be triggered, and after that, he would be completely consumed by it, and the poison could be neutralized. And now he has 50 days to live. Azathoth realized that the system had not returned to his body. And it can't be. Charlotte turned around and thought that there was no more than 10 meters between them. As long as he could see him, he could grab him. So he immediately gave the go-ahead for the tackle. Suddenly red smoke suddenly appeared and Charlotte thought, what had he done? It's so thick. You can't see anything. Azathoth looked at his hand and saw that his hand was wounded. Shatil also said that her palm was suddenly bleeding. Suddenly a drop fell on the grass and Azathoth appeared. He came out and said it was close and he almost died. The stupid system had betrayed him, but Shatil realized that it must surely know her location. Charlotte looked and saw that the system knew where he was. Charlotte was greatly surprised at the fact that he ran so far away in a second. Shatil asked Azathoth. He was sweating profusely. Azathoth replied that no one was capable of injuring him. She drank his blood, and their bodies aligned. If he was hurt, she would be hurt first. Shadil asked Azathoth, "Did he take care of that kid?" Azathoth replied that no, his attacks wouldn't work against him. Shadil asked, "Is that true?" Azathoth replied that she thought she was happy that he was alive. The girl said no. She hates him, and if he can't kill him, maybe they should go back to the dungeon? Azathoth replied that no. He's been with the system for 1,000 years. He knows how it works. She made sure his attacks wouldn't work on him. However, pleasure doesn't fall under the category of attacks. He will give him deadly pleasure. The system's selection of a host with a compatible symbiotic organism is a very difficult task. And so, when the human dies, the system will choose only him. And once he's human, the system won't be able to give away his location. Azathoth ordered Shadil to find the man. Suddenly Azathoth asked her servant. She had learned this transformation magic, right? Let her try to use it on her. Shadil replied that she would try it now. She started the process of magic, but Azathoth said that she would lose all her magic during the night. She would have to rely on it to support the transformation. Shadil turned her into a normal girl with her magic. Azathoth looked at it and said it wasn't bad. With this transformation, that person would not be able to recognize her. And people always like to do something like the hero saves the pretty girls. Let him play the hero once, and then she can make a smart move. She'll find an opportunity to push him. Shadil asked the Lord, "Can she really kill this man in a nice way?" Azathoth replied that of course she could. Otherwise, how does she think she would die? And now she's even left behind by the system. And the more she thinks about it, the angrier she gets. But why has the system rejected her? She doesn't understand it all. What was so good about that man? Charlotte realized at this time that he only had 50 days to live. If he found Azathoth within that time frame, he could be cured and survive. But time was running out, so he had to hurry up. But suddenly he felt a little sick and felt the poison in his body activate again, and this time it was his feet. He suddenly began to feel a burning sensation in his feet. His pinky toe began to burn. Charlotte immediately fell to the ground in great pain and screamed at the top of his voice. Zam was nearby at the time and saw the boy in pain. After passing out, Charlotte regained consciousness in the White Ward. When the doctors saw this, they began to shout that he was awake and immediately let them inform Lord Charlton. The deputy responded that he understood and would head over right away and tell him everything. Charlotte asked, "Is he in the hospital? But who brought him here?" The doctor replied that his Lordship Charlton, vice president of the Adventurers Guild, had brought him here. Charlotte was greatly surprised and asked what other guild vice president. Suddenly the door opened and a man walked in with words to the guy that he was already awake. Zam asked the guy if he remembered saving his life. Charlotte replied that it was a fat guy who had been chased by a spider. Zam started laughing and replied that was correct. Charlotte got curious and asked how long he had been unconscious. Zam replied that it was about 13 hours. Charlotte was surprised and asked that he had been unconscious for so long. The recent battles had exhausted him. Zam said he apologizes for his impatience and inattention, and he hopes he didn't interfere with his rest. Charlotte asked Zam if he needed anything from him. Zam squeezed his hand and replied to the guy that he had seen his battle with that spider woman. His magic is truly exceptional. Charlotte asked, and what was the problem? Zam thought and said that when men get older, certain abilities start to fade and they lose interest in certain things. But he had seen his battle. It was impressive, intense, and very exciting. And if he could learn it, he would definitely regain his youth and spare himself the misery of the last 10 years. So he asks Milord to teach him this magic. Let him accept him as his apprentice. Charlotte was greatly surprised and realized that the vice president of the Adventurers Guild wanted to be his apprentice. And if he became his teacher, they would have that connection. And using the guild's resources to find Azathoth, it will be very useful. But it's a systemic ability. How can he teach it to him? And then Charlotte said that his magic is very hard to learn. And could Zam accept that? Zam replied that he didn't care how hard it was. He had to try. And as the saying goes, the master leads him to the door, but practice is everyone's business. He will do anything to learn it, even if it costs him his life. Charlotte told him that the magic he had witnessed had to be practiced starting at the fingertips. Zam got on his knees and asked the master to take this apprentice's bow. Charlotte asked the apprentice to stand up quickly. The deputy said that's right. This matter shouldn't spread. After all, He's still the vice president of the Adventurers Guild. Charlotte replied to him that as he was his master, he understood. But suddenly Daisy, the deputy secretary, knocked and said she had something to report. Zam replied, motioning for her to come in. Suddenly Charlotte saw the paper and asked, was he convicted of desertion? Daisy replied that yes. The documents show that he disobeyed the order of the captain in Sirius Squad, escaped without authorization, causing the mission to fail. The deputy also looked at it and said that this case is really quite complicated. He will try to find someone who can handle it. Charlotte said there was no need. He didn't run away, and Nye's dungeon boss, and he had already taken care of it. Daisy says she found information about the squad retreat. He wants her to believe he's rank F and Bellaby rank and tier. The three of them defeated the S-rank monster boss Nye? That's just not possible. Charlotte said that she could send someone to Nye's dungeon to confirm his claims. Daisy replied that it was empty at the moment. She has already sent someone out. However, it needs to be held during the investigation to prevent any escape problems. Zam says there's no need for that, and he trusts Charlotte's word. Daisy told him it was against the rules. Zam said he would then take responsibility for overseeing him during the investigation process. Daisy replied to Zam that he needs to attend the guild appreciation banquet tonight. Zam said let Charlotte accompany him then. Daisy told Zam that the banquet was very important. Let him change his mind. Charlotte agreed and replied that he had never been to a guild banquet before. Zam thought a moment and said that it was settled then. He will not interfere with his rest. He would come and take him to the banquet. Suddenly, Charlotte decided to turn to the system and see if Azathoth's location. When he is ready, he will go in search of him. He immediately turned to the panel and told it to show him Azathoth's location. Charlotte looked and saw that the monster had not run out of town. But why was he back again? And it was so close to him. But suddenly he realized that this is wrong. He's in the hospital, and he's so close. Charlotte jumped up and screamed, this is his house. He's in his house. Charlotte immediately ran home and noticed that the spider was still here. He started combing through all the rooms and wondered, what happened to South? In a moment, he realized that Yurg had been captured. On the other side, Yug came to her senses and asked where was she? Azathoth saw her come to her senses and replied that this was an auction place for monsters and humans. Charlotte looked at the map and decided to go save the South. But it's been half an hour and Azathoth hasn't moved. And it's very close to him. But suddenly everything changed and the dot disappeared from the map. It seemed very strange to him. And now he realized that it would be impossible to track Azathoth at night. But everything changed at that moment. Suddenly someone attacked him and Charlotte managed to dodge and move away from the distance. The guy said this is their Star Cavalry's territory. Whether they are monsters or heroes, they will deal with invaders without mercy. Charlotte realized they were bandits, doing kidnappings. The other warriors stood on the roof, saying that another hero had come to deal with them. The guy who attacked Charlotte said that the female monsters and the women in the dungeon are decoys released to lure them out. The warrior suddenly said that he didn't even know if there were other heroes lurking nearby. He offered to capture him and interrogate him. Charlotte thought that the female monster they were talking about must be South. The timing of it all worked out. He also wants to ask them if they've seen a pervert monster around. The system suddenly reminded him that the weapon return mission would begin in 2 minutes. Charlotte realized that by accepting the return mission, the indicators would return to the original F rank, and now he only has 2 minutes left. He must finish this quickly. Yug was suffering at this time and couldn't break free because of the restraining magic, and without a man's nourishment, her body had become too weak. She even wondered if she could go back to where her master lived. Azathoth asked her, she is a monster, isn't she? Doesn't she feel like going back to the dungeon? Yug replied that she doesn't think like a normal monster. They, Ling lizards, naturally rely on the essence of men. Right now, she just instinctively chose a stronger man. Human dens are much better than monster caves. Besides, the bottled wine is delicious. But suddenly, the wall exploded right in front of them. Charlotte walked in and sighed when he saw that everything had been resolved within 2 minutes. And if they'd given him the keys sooner, it wouldn't have taken a beating. Yug saw the host and yelled to him. The system said weapon return time activated. 10 let him slap someone's ass until they make a sound. And the mission countdown begins. Charlotte jumped on the guy and asked him to wake up. and asked him if he could make sounds. But the guy passed out. Charlotte said he was completely unconscious and shouldn't have hit him so hard. Azathoth turned to the brave hero and asked him to save her. Charlotte thought that they were on the outskirts. Monsters could show up at any moment, and it was dangerous without the system's power. So he decided to do the mission first. Charlotte let Yug out and told her to forgive him and started spanking her butt. Yug started screaming and asked the owner what he was doing. Charlotte replied, "In order for them to safely escape from this place, he needs to spank her ass. So don't let her fight back." Azathoth realized he was definitely a bad boy. All she had to do with that type of guy was flirt a little, and he'd fall for it. And she couldn't believe he'd come up with such an absurd excuse to take advantage of her. She lifted her foot and motioned for him to help her open it. And if he could save her, she wouldn't mind if he spanked her. She's ready to offer herself to him right now. Charlotte opened the shackles and let her out. Azathoth threw it on him and said he was a brave hero. They kidnapped and forcefully tied her here, and she was so scared. And they said they were going to sell her to the goblins. And if the hero saves her, she'll be his. Charlotte wasn't shy and immediately slapped her ass. He asked her if she was going to make a sound. The girl answered him to try again. Charlotte suddenly began to think. But the system said the target didn't make a sound. The host freezes for 5 minutes. And the remaining time is 55 minutes. Charlotte suddenly didn't faint and fell to the ground. The South went up to him and asked how the master was feeling. Charlotte replied that he was very uncomfortable right now. He needs the essence and blood of their body. Otherwise, he would really fall down and die. South asked the master why he was silent, but the light slowly went out in front of his eyes. And then Yug said that she would then consider him to be in agreement. Yug started biting him and said she would start at his neck. The girl suddenly screamed that she was a shameless lizard. She dared to make a move while she wasn't looking. Let her let him go. South was grabbed by the girl with the tail and told that no, he was her master, not hers. And besides, she came first. Azathoth was angry and realized that if it was daytime, he would have spanked her by now. But it was important for her to get the system back. No need to argue with her. Suddenly Charlotte saw the girl suggest to him that they do a threesome. He immediately opened his eyes and jumped up. Charlotte felt that this woman was really being held against her will. But why was she willingly doing this to him? Shadow watched it all and thought, does Azathoth really want this? The sensations in her body shared with her. The girl said it had been a long time since she had played like this. Shadow couldn't help herself either, and she could feel herself getting excited. Yug told her master to try bending his fingers and applying a little pressure. Shatel at this time began to feel her whole body begin to feel numb, and goosebumps were running through it. Azathoth didn't stop and continued to fondle it. But Charlotte felt everything and asked her not to touch it. Shatel also felt that her hand felt as if it was holding onto something at this moment. But Charlotte suddenly felt the sensation of that grip. It seemed familiar to him, and he now sensed that it was Azathoth. Azathoth at this point wondered why the guy's gaze on him had changed. Azathoth immediately removed her hand and realized the technique herself. She was using the same technique without noticing it herself. Azathoth immediately shouted to Shatil and called her for help. Shatil wasted no time and rappelled down from the roof to them. Yug turned around and said it was dangerous. She immediately turned into a lizard and asked her master to protect her. Azathoth was screaming at Shatil to save him and get him out of here soon. Charlotte realized that Azathoth had actually turned into a woman to get close to him, but luckily, he discovered her. He can't use the system's abilities right now, it can't keep up with him. The system suddenly kicked in and said the freeze time was over. Charlotte immediately came to his senses and said that he had escaped so quickly and decided to finish the mission first. When he had access to the system, then he would go after him. But in the future, when night falls, he must be careful of anyone who comes near him. The system said the mission to retrieve the weapon had already begun, and it's time to complete the mission. At this time, in front of the gate of Zone Z, many people had gathered. The guards were telling the captain that he was here. Charlotte looked over and saw the secretary to the vice president and Sirius standing in front of him. Sirius came up to him and said that Charlotte had committed desertion and was under arrest. And here's the arrest warrant. And he has to go with them. But Daisy stood up for him and told the captain to stop. She's the secretary to the vice president. They investigated Nye's dungeon and it's empty, which contradicts the accusation, and the process of canceling the warrant has already begun. They can't arrest him now. He has to attend the guild banquet later. Sirius got angry and said no lies. Only captains of a rank and above can attend the banquet. And she claims to be the president's secretary. He's the president, and if she continued to cause trouble, he would also throw her in the interrogation room with him. Charlotte said to go and ask permission from the president and bring the notice of annulment to save him. He will definitely help. Will she be able to do it within 20 minutes? Daisy replied that 10 minutes would be enough. Charlotte told the captain that he would make them apologize to her later and spank them harder. Immediately afterward, they went to the interrogation room. Sirius asked the boy how his right arm had been injured. Did he still remember? He bravely led his team into battle against the monster Nay. But he, in order to escape, attacked him from behind, giving Naya an opportunity, leading to the death of most of his team members. He sacrificed his right arm to save the lives of the remaining crew members. So let him now say, does a coward like him deserve life or death? Charlotte replied that he is a coward who runs away when faced with an enemy. He certainly deserves to die like an animal. Sirius got angry after saying that and told the servant to bring a hammer over here. Charlotte realized that 10 minutes had already passed. That secretary should be here soon. But he still couldn't use the system. He would have to be patient for now. But suddenly on his leg, he felt someone walking and looking south said he couldn't hurt him. She absorbed a bit of his blood essence, and it restored a bit of her magical power. It was more than enough to withstand human torture, and after they got home, he would have to repay her twice as much. Suddenly, Sirius picked up the hammer and slammed it down on the table with all his might. Sirius told him to pick one of his fingers, and they would start with him. Or should he choose for him himself? Suddenly the door opened, and a guy yelled to the captain that they were in trouble. The president's secretary has arrived with a notice to cancel the warrant for Charlotte. Sirius stopped and took the paper and said, "What's with the notice of annulment? This woman is really the vice president's secretary." The boy asked the captain if he knew the president. Sirius replied that was nonsense. How can a hero of F rank have connections with someone of the president's level? The boy asked the captain, should they let him go? Sirius replied that torture was forbidden after receiving notice of the warrant being canceled. Then would they let him go now? Sirius replied that they wouldn't now, and have him bring him that notice in half an hour. He hasn't gotten the recall notice yet. I've never heard of it. Charlotte realized that things were bad, and he had to get out of it. Sirius was furious and said he had to pay for it today. The guy standing outside the door was telling the secretary that his captain wasn't out yet, and he didn't have permission to come in. Daisy told him to back off. She would show him the recall notice herself. The guy replied that this is an interrogation room. She has no right to go in and out at will. Sirius didn't stop and brought the hammer down with all his might right on Charlotte's arm. But Charlotte was, they said, a force of magic, and this hammer did nothing to him. But on the contrary, from his hand the hammer cracked a little. Sirius picked up the hammer and looked down at his hand in surprise and thought, what happened? No broken bones, no blood, and not a scratch on the skin. Daisy yelled at the guy to get out of the way. The guy replied that she had no right to come in. But then Zam came in and asked, does he have the right to come in? They were surprised that Zam himself came to the interrogation room. No one interfered with him, and with 2 feet, he opened the door and came in. Sirius was greatly surprised and wondered with amazement, was it really Zam who had come? He asked the president why he was here. The deputy replied that it was a notice to cancel the warrant for Charlotte's arrest. Have them release him immediately. Sirius let go of the hammer from his hands and replied that he would do it right away. Zam came up to him and said that as captain, he had abused his power and tortured a man, and if this case is investigated, he will at least be stripped of his rank of captain. Sirius told Zam that he hadn't received notice of the warrant being canceled. That's why he took action. His comrades can be witnesses, and turned to his men and told them to say something too. But the guys were silent and did not want to offend the president. Zam looked up and said no words. Sirius sensed that there was a stench of heat and told Zam that he didn't need to. And Sirius realized at that moment that he could only turn to his brother for help. But then Charlotte came up and said he could testify that he hadn't seen the warrant revocation notice earlier. Charlotte said he would not pursue the case that he arrested him. However, they should bow down and apologize to the secretary. Charlotte picked up a stick and heard the others apologize to the secretary. Charlotte swung a stick and said they were rude to such a beautiful secretary. And it's disrespectful. Daisy watched all of this and heard them all screaming. The warriors began to say one by one that they were wrong. The system told the guy that the mission to retrieve the weapon was complete. Charlotte dropped the stick and said it was finally complete. The case between them and the secretary is over. Sirius asked the guy what he meant. Charlotte took his hand and told him to let them settle the matter now. Sirius asked Charlotte, didn't he say he wasn't going to pursue his arrest? The boy replied that it was a matter of punching him in the arm. Sirius started yelling that he was apologizing, and he was wrong, and he was wrong, and he apologizes. Charlotte agreed and grabbed his arm and broke it right in front of everyone. Sirius started screaming in pain and felt his bone break. The warriors surrounded him from different directions and shouted to the captain. Charlotte left and said he forgave him. Zam tells the guy that Daisy is now escorting them to the banquet. He has to meet the messenger from the Holy Territory first. After that, he would come to get him. Charlotte asked, Holy Territory? Zam replied that they founded the church with a mission to eradicate all evil thoughts in the world. They have unrivaled cleansing magic, able to remove any toxins from the body. And if he wants to destroy evil thoughts, one must first thoroughly understand them. Afterward, they went straight to the hall's appreciation banquet. Zam took charge of everything and passed with the queen of this ball. The guard who followed them was greatly surprised to see the Holy of Holies of the throne. And it turns out her outfit is so revealing. The guy asked if it was too inappropriate for a saint to dress like that. The guy standing next to him replied that he thought so too. Suddenly, the saint stopped and looked at them. The boy was very frightened and thought she had heard them. The saint said that their doctrine is to eradicate all evil thoughts in the world. To eradicate evil thoughts, they must fully understand them. And that's why the people in their holy throne dress like that. And let them not look at them with their dirty eyes. Zam lost his temper after these words and told the guards to punch them 10 times. The guys told him they didn't mean it and let him spare them. But the Holy One said it was not necessary. If they punish them for it, then everyone here should be punished, except for the vice president. Zam was suddenly surprised and asked how he was different from them. The saint replied that his mind was in turmoil, but his body was almost unresponsive. And unlike the others who reacted violently and had an outburst of angry thoughts, Zam said that he is a man with a pure heart, so he has self-control. But suddenly the guys standing nearby were saying that they had heard somewhere that the vice president was impotent. The boys suddenly appeared in front of the castle. Daisy said it looks like it's true. This is the place for the Thanksgiving banquet. Charlotte asked if they were coming in. Charlotte asked if the purification magic of the Holy See was strong. Daisy replied that it certainly is. It is their unique magic, from lost limbs to illnesses to severe poisoning. They can heal everything. Was hero a risky profession? And hero guilds of all regions want to cooperate with them. But they were all rejected. But suddenly Charlotte imagined him begging the saint to save himself. They don't want to use magic on others easily. Their reason is evil thoughts. But Charlotte thought that maybe they could get rid of the poison. He must at least try. Daisy put in her card, and the system said the identity check was confirmed. The servant standing by the door let them in and wished them a good evening. Charlotte was greatly surprised and asked what they were there for. Daisy replied that she didn't know exactly. Zam approached them and told them that the saint was testing their competence to cooperate with the Holy See. And if someone passes the test, cooperation is possible. Their hero guild from Zone Z will definitely gain a huge amount of power. Suddenly a saint came out and said that this is the treasure of their holy throne, the veil of the Sacred Heart. And once they refuse within, the level of evil thoughts in their heart will be revealed by the gem. And being able to cooperate with their holy throne depended on the purity of their heart. None of the hero guilds in other regions have gone through this. Those present asked, how do we measure purity of heart? What is inside? Maybe some kind of mechanism? The saint replied that if they wanted to find out, let them go inside and try it. Suddenly Team 7's Captain Logan stepped forward and said he would give it a try. He has a pure heart. He has never done anything shameful. Logan walked inside and was suddenly very surprised. He saw a Catwoman standing in front of him. He immediately realized it was his weakness. And she was gorgeous. Logan looked at all of this and blushed deeply. The Catwoman came very close to him and held his clothes in her teeth. Logan saw her take the initiative to move closer to him. But suddenly he couldn't help himself, and his nose bled. Logan looked at her in amazement and said that she was really just gorgeous, and motioned to her to let him look at her. Catwoman asked him what he wanted to pet. Logan didn't blush and replied, "One great place." Catwoman told him to stop and said it was disgusting. She just gave him a flick, and he flew out of the box. Everyone was surprised when they saw him fly out of there like a cork. Logan started screaming that she had broken his chin. The box system immediately showed that the level of evil thoughts was 88%. Definitely a person with a dirty heart. One of the guys started yelling for them to look. That Captain Logan has an 88% evil thought level on the crystal, and whatever is inside, it must be very dangerous. But then Team 6 Captain Owen came into the conversation and said he would go and check it out. And it doesn't matter what's inside. He can handle it. But after a few minutes, he too came out of the box with blood on his face, without even expecting it himself. The guys went to him and said he was bleeding badly. "Are you sure he's okay?" Owen replied that he was. The guys asked the captain what he saw, and the box system showed he took 92%. The Saint saw the crowd of people, but she was saddened every time. She realized she was only wasting time. There is not one under 80 here. They are all dirty inside, and no one here can pass the test. Suddenly Charlotte came out and said it was his turn to try. Saint was already glad he was the last one. Charlotte entered the box and was greatly surprised at what he saw. He couldn't believe this could be. The cat girl started twirling her tail in front of him and asked him if he wanted to. Charlotte put his hand over her face and pushed. Charlotte said she was another woman who was actively approaching him, and he should be more careful. It's very likely. Azathoth again. Catwoman said this is the first man to reject her actively. The Saint was suddenly and unexpectedly surprised. She saw 0% on the table and said that this had never happened before. People started shouting that someone could actually accomplish this. Calm as water, Charlotte thought before confirming her identity. He'd better be careful. Suddenly the system said she was already activated. The system asked him if he wanted to lock up the enemy, and now he could use Azathoth's Spear of Oblivion. Charlotte realized that he only had one chance. If he blundered, when facing Azat, he would be doomed. Catwoman was surprised that for the first time, she was rejected by a man, and he even pushed her away. But he stares intently at her body. But there is no lust in his gaze. Charlotte thought at this moment that he should be attentive to her movements, but they really are huge. But Catwoman saw that this guy is a bit hostile to her. It's even more annoying than the guys who lust for her body. But this is even more of a humiliation to her beauty. She must now find a way to make his heart beat. Meanwhile, Charlotte was thinking that he should find an opportunity to see if she had any masculine traits. The Catwoman told him not to look at her so hostilely. A warm, gentle embrace would help them connect. Charlotte saw her running to hug him, but he suddenly dodged and the cat just hugged the air. The Catwoman was rejected again. She pounced on him again and yelled at him not to be shy. Charlotte suddenly slipped and fell, but the Catwoman wanted him to feel her tenderness, and his heart would surely flutter. Charlotte suddenly notices that he has an angle just right. He could do it now, if there was anything in it. Charlotte suddenly jumped right in front of her and realized he only had to move his eyes a little and he would see. Catgirl noticed that even when he dodges, he still stares intently at her breasts. Charlotte was suddenly very surprised and thought, why is this happening? He just can't take his eyes off them. Truly magnificent. The Catgirl asked him why that was so. He was clearly staring at her breasts like everyone else, and his body reacted too. But there's no trace of evil thoughts in his heart. He's so calm. Why is this happening? Charlotte replied that because he is an honest man. He doesn't have any vulgar thoughts about her body, and when they are born into this world, it is the breasts that provide them with milk and nutrients, allowing them to grow strong and survive. So that's why he looks at her chest with a heart full of gratitude. The Catwoman was surprised by his words and saw a blinding light. She realized he was just that kind of person, and there's a huge gulf between them. And now Charlotte was in front of her like some important and honest man. Catgirl said he passed the test. Now he could leave. Charlotte was pretty surprised that she was letting him leave, and it seems she really is an Azathoth. Charlotte turned around and said goodbye to her. He went out to the audience and showed them his pride. Catwoman said that her training probably wasn't enough. She needed more work. The guy said right off the bat that his evil thought level is 0%, and that's just absurd. But there's no way a man has no interest in a Catwoman. Or maybe that crystal's broken. The saint said it was the first time she had seen a man with a completely pure heart. Charlotte replied that he had already gone through the rest. Could they use purification magic on him to remove the poison? The saint replied that of course. She immediately turned to everyone and told them to leave the hall immediately. Left alone, Saint said she would now detox him. Have him lie down. Charlotte was surprised and asked, did he need to do anything else? Saint told him not to move. The saint said that their purification magic was granted to them by the holy species. Each person has a different part of the body that conjures magic, and her purification magic is on her feet. And she uses her feet to work her magic. The saint said that as long as she uses purification magic, he should not harbor evil thoughts. Otherwise, the mania would gradually lose its effect. Charlotte asked, did these evil thoughts apply only to him? The saint replied that they did. From the moment she became a saint of the Holy See, her desire disappeared. Now have him completely relaxed. She will move from top to bottom. This is necessary for her to assess his physical condition, and so she could furthermore treat his body. Suddenly, the saint put her foot down on his hand where the finger had been cut off and began to move it slowly. Charlotte realized she wanted to use her foot to move his hand, and he decided to understand. But the saint told him not to move. She would do it. Otherwise, it would affect her ability to conjure. But suddenly she said she thought this chair felt cramped, and asked him to let her use his face for support. She stepped on his face with all her weight and said she was starting, and Charlotte held out his hand, but she stepped on him and pinned him to the ground. Suddenly Charlotte opened his eyes and felt that he was in the water. He began to ask where was he? Turning around, he saw a foot heading towards him. He tried to stop it, that it was very heavy. At this time in the real world, Saint lifted her foot from his hand and told him to relax. Let him not struggle with her foot. After all, it is part of the healing process. She uses her purification magic to project his consciousness into a part of his body. She pulls him out of the water and his fingers are fine. Charlotte was surprised and saw her foot in front of him again, but this time he caught it. The saint told him that she would pull it out with one swoop. Charlotte began to scream that something under the water was entangling him. The saint said it was poison in his body. Venom tried to wrap him up completely, but Saint shouted at him to grab her leg and not let go. Charlotte couldn't just grasp with his hands and decided to get his teeth into it too. He thought he needed to tear it open and expose them. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to grasp properly. Saint said he tore her apart. How rude of him. Charlotte immediately went between her two fingers and held on tight. Charlotte saw that even though she was holding him tightly, he felt no pain. On the contrary, he felt very comfortable and felt that his finger was in the warmth. After a few minutes, the saint pulled him out of the water safe and sound. In real life, Charlotte's finger appeared back and was as good as new, like it had always been there. Charlotte looked at it and said the finger was working. Saint replied to him that she felt there was a residue left, and have him take the shoe off. Charlotte took off his shoes and showed his toe. Immediately Saint saw that the same was true on his foot. The saint performed the ritual and said the limbs were restored. And Charlotte realized that the magic of purification was amazing. The saint turned around and said that now she had to change direction. She had found the location of the poison in his body. They must work together to get it out of his system, and now let him be still and lie on his back. She put her foot in front of his face and Charlotte was startled and thought, what is this? The saint told the guy that he had to take it down. All he has to do is bring the poison to the surface and it will disappear, and his body would be cleansed. Charlotte replied that he couldn't breathe underwater. Saint told him not to panic. He'll be fine that way, and she'll help him flush out all the poison, continuously building his strength. Charlotte suddenly said he was getting bigger. Charlotte asked with surprise, is that poison in his body? But Saint thought in a moment of process, why does her body feel something strange? But suddenly something indescribable happened. Venom grabbed hold of the guy again. Charlotte said they pushed him away. The saint said that this water symbolizes his body consciousness, and while he's underwater, she needs to use second-level purification magic to create a shield around him. Let him try to break through those poisons. Perhaps it would resonate with his own magic. Charlotte had told her to hurry up. He was already confused. Saint said she was starting. But suddenly the system said the target is locked. She suddenly realized that her body felt strange. Charlotte suddenly started screaming that the poisons were tearing apart. The Saint said the shield is in place. Let him swim down and try it. Charlotte climbs down and screams that it's working. The shield is breaking through the poisons. And that way, he could get closer to the source of the poison sooner. After a while, Charlotte said why he still hadn't gotten any closer. After swimming such a long distance, he should have reached him by now. The Saint told him that he could not use real distances to judge distance in body consciousness. It looks close, but is actually far away. She realized to maintain this shield, she would need to rub it constantly. It was going to be very exhausting, but she feels a sense of joy spreading up her legs. And it's very strange. Charlotte swam down and suddenly started yelling to Saint that her shield was cracking and water was getting in. The Saint said that maybe her purification magic is weaker. And impure thoughts appear. The Saint told him if he wanted to get rid of the poison, let him stop thinking dirty thoughts about her. Otherwise, the purification magic will stop working. Suddenly, the magic completely shattered and the shield broke. Charlotte started screaming he was suffocating. The Saint realized that she needed to rub harder to quickly restore her shield, and her purification magic would not fail. The system showed that her level of favor was 67%. Charlotte couldn't take it anymore and gasped for water. In the moment, he immediately came to his senses in the real world. Charlotte immediately turned to her, but Saint thought and realized that she needed to recover the shield. And when she stepped on it, she actually felt inexplicable pleasure, and she wants to keep stepping on it. Charlotte kept yelling to her, but she couldn't hear him. But suddenly she came to her senses and asked the guy that he was back to reality already. Charlotte replied that it appears that she did. Saint said that her treatment had failed. She wondered what had happened to her. Her heart was beating so fast now. She feels so familiar with the feeling, and it feels like impure thoughts. It was her impure thoughts that caused the cleansing magic to fail. She must not tell anyone about this. It concerns the dignity of the Holy See. The Saint told the boy that his treatment was complete. Charlotte asked her if she couldn't get the poison out of his body either. The Saint replied that of course they can. There is no poison that the Holy See cannot cure, but it would take a long treatment. Once she found a way to reach the source of the poison, she would let him know, but she could still heal the limbs of his body. Let her come into the Holy See anytime to find her. And her name is Lilia. Lily said that was all for today, and it was time for them to say goodbye. Charlotte was surprised and realized that it was indeed necessary to find Azathoth to get rid of the poison. Lilia hid behind the corner immediately after leaving and felt like she was barely holding back. But her desire was gone. Why she still felt it. But of course it's different, and it's amazing. Darren at this time to his brother and told him he couldn't handle a little thing like this. Sirius replied to his brother that this time it was the vice president. Darren told him to shut up. He doesn't want to hear any excuses. Darren tossed a file into his hands and told him to take it. It's a map of a rank A Shia dungeon. He's leading the team there. Sirius was surprised and said that the boss Shia of SS rank. He's only rank A. That's equivalent to sending him to his death. Darren said that the Shia dungeon has already been almost conquered by the heroes from Area K. According to the information from the returning heroes, the Shia boss is seriously wounded. Now even an F-ranked hero can defeat him. He had intercepted and blocked this news in advance, and now he has a chance to take advantage of it and take over as captain. Sirius rejoiced and said that he understood everything, and he promised his brother that this time he would definitely succeed. But actually Azathoth found him first and drank his blood. He told Shia that after he drank his blood, his body had to recover. Shia suddenly jumped up abruptly and started shouting that he was fully revived. He turned to Azathoth-san and said that he had saved him again. But is there anything he can do to repay him? He doesn't want to be in debt. Azathoth replied that it was simple. Let him kill one person. Charlotte at this time opened the map and said that the monster went to such a far place. Zam told the guy that he had made a significant contribution this time. Their zone would cooperate with the holy species, and their strength had greatly increased. Zam asked the guy if he had any requests. Have him let him know immediately. Charlotte asked that Zam give him the captain's position. That way he would have the right to choose which dungeon to go to. Zam replied, no problem. Charlotte said he's going home now to get ready. He will leave town at 8 o'clock in the afternoon. But he realized that he only had 49 days. And now he couldn't waste any more time. Zam asked, is it urgent then? Zam said that they are currently understaffed in their guild. The process for promotion to captain may not be completed by noon. Daisy said she could help. She was familiar with the procedure and could have it done before noon. Charlotte was surprised and asked, really? Daisy replied that she did. Let him consider it a gift for helping her with those guys. Charlotte came home and was happy to say that he was finally home. But when he opened the door, he saw Yug standing in front of him. The girl greeted him. South said she cleaned the house and also finished all the food in the house. And now the house is spotless, and she's the kind of maid every man can find and dreams of being praised. Charlotte said to make her amazing, but at least she could save some food. South replied that it was good she would save some for next time. Yug told her master that she was actually useful and could stay here forever. Charlotte asked her if she didn't want to go home. Yug was greatly surprised and asked, home? But it is not, for there is only a lair for monsters, but not a house. Charlotte thought about it and said sure, but she shouldn't let anyone know she's a monster. After all, this is a human town. Otherwise they'd be in trouble. Yug told the host that he could be calm. She was very good at hiding. The system suddenly showed that the gratitude had reached 100%, but the system also showed that once you get close to it, the increase in value doubles. Yug said that her work was now ready. But now it was the master's turn. Charlotte was greatly surprised and asked, turn for what? South replied that in the dungeon, she blocked a few hammer blows for him, and he used up a lot of her magic, and he promised her that he would repay her debt. Charlotte replied that he had guessed and would do so. Charlotte realized that getting close to her, but she could take his strength, which would be very useful for the upcoming travels. And he supposes that's the end of it. Daisy was on the road at this time and said she would arrive at Charlotte's house soon. Yugu at this time took off all of her clothes and said that the master's body was really fantastic. But South wouldn't leave him alone and said she couldn't help but really wanted to get close to him. It immediately sank its teeth into his body and began to gain strength. But the system showed that his defenses immediately increased. Every minute he was gaining more and more strength and increasing his abilities for the next fight with his enemies. Charlotte didn't resist for long and pulled away from her grip and said he was in a lot of pain. South suddenly realized her mistake and replied that she was sorry. Yug said she got too excited for a moment and forgot about controlling herself, but suddenly someone knocked on the door. Yug told the landlord that someone had come to see them. Charlotte replied that it was probably the secretary delivering the notice of his promotion. Charlotte told Yugu to hide in the other room and to sit there quietly for a while. Charlotte opened the door and was surprised to say that Daisy had come in. He had just been in the shower, so he was late in opening the door. Daisy replied that there is no problem. She had already finalized the work with the promotion process. And here's his captain's card and the promotion notice. Charlotte was surprised and thanked her for doing such a good job. But Daisy said that she had bought some fruit. She doesn't know what he likes, so she bought different fruits. Charlotte replied that it was great, and he just ran away from them after the talk and didn't even have time to eat. And if she wasn't aware of it, Daisy could bring more fruit next time. South stood behind the wall and listened, saying it was a woman who had come to see the master. Daisy told the guy that if he needed help in the future, to just let him dial her. But suddenly Yug came out and said that the two of them seemed to get along well. Daisy was surprised and asked, who is that? And she's so tall. Charlotte at this time was wondering why South came out and showed herself. And in a moment she turned to the man. Yug said she's his good sister. Isn't that right, sweet brother? Charlotte replied that it was right. It was. Yug asked her sweet brother right away to give her a kiss. Charlotte answered her that it was not necessary to do so. Charlotte reached to grab the fruit, but Daisy was angry with him and just pulled the bag on top of her. Daisy immediately walked out the door and said goodbye to him. Yug had told the master that she knew a little about transformed magic. Charlotte thought hard and told her they were going, and she would stay here alone and let her be quieter than water. Daisy was very unhappy with what was happening, and going outside immediately threw the bag in the trash. After that, Charlotte started to get dressed and told Yugu that he had an important assignment for her. Let her turn into a human and go buy some food, but no need to get caught. Yug replied to the master not to worry. and would easily accomplish the task at hand for her. Charlotte had already dressed at this time and realized that now he had to find Azathoth. But when he went outside, he saw that there was fruit in front of the door. But he saw that Daisy had left a letter over the fruit. He picked it up and decided to read it and find out about it. On the way, the warriors said the journey was smooth. Not even a single trap went off. And the next Captain Cyrus was indeed the best choice. Sirius started laughing and said that's the power from his source. They guys really hit the jackpot this time by following him. Sirius realized that with the map his brother had given him, this whole journey was like a walk in the park. And he saw in the map that there was a fork in the road ahead. He should take the left path. One of the warriors said that about 10 teams of rank heroes came to the territory this year, but they all failed to conquer it. They used their intelligence to defeat the boss. They would be furious when they found out. Sirius replied that there was nothing they could do. Sirius said that the guild rule sounds like the team that defeats the first boss gets all the resources. And if there's a leak, they have to accept it. At this time, the system was telling the guy that he had killed a rock giant monster, and he got a map for the area. Charlotte said that he had been shown to have increased significantly, and defeating a rank A monster is now a breeze. He realized that it was all thanks to Yugu. But looking at the map, he said that Azathoth had reached deep inside the dungeon and arrived at the boss. The team suddenly heard a rustling in the bushes. Sirius ordered everyone to be vigilant, and something to their left is coming at them. Charlotte came out of the bushes at this time, and Sirius was surprised that this was the guy who had hit him with a hammer and broken his arms. Sirius wondered, what on earth was he doing here? Could he be here to snatch victory from them? Sirius asked the boy what happened and what was he doing here. Charlotte replied, something the same thing he was doing, monster hunting. Sirius asked him, where's the team? Charlotte replied that he had come alone, and he was in a big hurry, and they would definitely cross paths on the way. And Sirius realized that to meet him was a stroke of luck, and conquers this rank A dungeon alone. And Charlotte must know boss Shia already has, and he's weakened. And this guy is even greedier than him, and he's appropriated all the credit. Sirius got angry and shouted to everyone to move quickly behind him. The warriors replied that the order would be obeyed. He realized that he couldn't let him find the weakened Shia first and take credit. Charlotte got to one point and told the system to open the map and show him the way. The system said the card is open and all the requisites will be here. And pulling out this sword, the paths will change left and right. Let him use it to turn the trap off or on. Sirius arrived as well and was surprised to see his brother's map showing him the way. He realized that there was a fork in the road before the entrance. The right way was a dead end and the left way was the right way. He didn't stop and ran. Sirius realized that this sword couldn't be pulled out, and it looked like his data wasn't as good as his. And as soon as he takes the left path, he'll seal it behind him, and the guy won't get all the laurels. But everything changed at that moment as he approached the doors and a real dragon appeared above them. The warriors all started to get scared and said it was a dragon, and it seems to them that someone released the dragon on purpose. Sirius wondered greatly and thought, why is the dragon here? His brother's map and intelligence didn't mention it. The dragon was very big and vicious, destroying everything in his path. And to get into the dungeon, he broke down all the walls. Sirius shouted that the wall was collapsing and let the others run back. A warrior appeared and grabbed the dragon by the tail and started waving it around as he wished. The dragon could not cope with the warrior and lost to him. The warrior made the dragon die from one blow. Sirius was also surprised that she had taken the dragon without hands. The dragon didn't die and began to serve its master. Daphne asked the boys where they were from and what area. Sirius replied that Area Z. And they are a team from Arena Z. Daphne asked them, are they here to subdue Shia too? Sirius didn't hold back and replied that was correct. Daphne said it sounds like their area won't forgive any support from Area Z. And he's trying to compete with her? Sirius realized that if he argued with her that it definitely wouldn't end. He answered her that no, they could cooperate. It would be an honor for him to fight beside her. Daphne said they wouldn't get that chance. She never cooperates with others. Only the weak rely on others. But Daphne kept a hearing aid nearby too, and who asked if there was any hero nearby? Here they got a dragon, and asking for support. Daphne tells the crew that they're a bunch of screamers at the sight of a dragon. If they're scared, let them go home. No need to cause trouble. and they can't be her rivals. When she returns, she doesn't want to see any of them, and let them consider it a warning. Daphne thought about the help that was being asked of her and realized that it wasn't that far from here. She picked up speed and flew into the air. Charlotte was surprised to see her because she could fly. Maybe he would have that ability in the future. He would be very happy about that. Sirius seized this moment and realized that this was the perfect opportunity. And before that woman came back, he would find Boss Shia and finish the job. And with this map, he would definitely be able to do that. Charlotte saw them head inside, and he found it very suspicious. Sirius was telling everyone to be careful, because there was a lot of machinery. He immediately started to collapse everything and embarrassed everyone. The mechanism immediately worked and lowered a large cube behind them, which surprised them. Sirius said they had already sealed the place, and all the credit would be definitely theirs. The warriors started shouting the captain's name and cheering that they had done it. Charlotte had been standing in front of the sword the whole time, and the system was showing his vitality dropping. And at the last moment, he pulled out the sword. The dungeon suddenly began to move in different directions. The warrior asked, "Is this an earthquake?" The system showed Charlotte that he had a new ability. He rejoiced and said that now he would take the right path for himself. Sirius said that the people of the region had already cleared all the monsters on the way to the boss, and they should be arriving soon. As for the monsters on the other road, that's unknown. There are more wild wolves of rank B obsidian claws, and Charlotte went alone, and he's definitely dead. Sirius started laughing and asked the boys if they thought he could compete with them. He was really overestimating himself, and they've wasted enough time. He suggested moving faster. They're already one step ahead. Suddenly the warriors saw someone and turned to the captain. They asked him to look ahead. Sirius asked if it was a wolf. Sirius didn't understand how this happened and asked where they were going. After all, there shouldn't be a single monster on the map. The wolves were very bloodthirsty and immediately pounced on their victims. Sirius said they were coming at them. Have everyone get ready for battle. In Boss Shia's room, Azathoth was enjoying himself and was lying on the couch. He said that he was already tired, and she had never seen monsters have very much blood, and told Shia not to let him go downstairs. Shia said that he feels his body is different from what it used to be. He has a constant stream of power surges from his body. Shatil asked Azathoth, "Can Shia really kill a man?" Azathoth replied that in terms of strength alone, Shia is definitely above that man. Shatil said that this man seems to increase his power during battle. Azathoth replied that it doesn't this time. All the monsters in this dungeon, they are all men. Charlotte suddenly got trapped and met up with a wolf pack too. He said he had so much magic power after being exhausted, and he pulled out the sword and decided to try it out now. The system told the guy that using this sword to strike at specified points could trigger the mechanisms. Charlotte thought about it and decided to let this dungeon be his tool. And their skins are very tough, and they are energized by it. Charlotte didn't waste any time and thrust his sword into the ground. He fired a bunch of arrows that he aimed at the wolves. Charlotte realized that these wolves were definitely stronger than him. He began to chop everyone in his path and told them to get some rest. A little in the moment he got distracted, and one of the wolves came at him with its teeth. But Charlotte didn't stop and cut him open. Sirius was also fighting the wolves at this time and shouting for them all to go back. Like cowards, they all started to run away from the battle and save their lives. But when they saw the exit in front of them, they ran. But suddenly a cube fell down in front of them and blocked their way. The guy started to panic and said that now they were in big trouble. Sirius turned around and said that the wolves were chasing them and ordered the boys to go and stop the wolves. While he's here, look at the map and find them a way to open the door. One of the warriors set up a defense and asked the captain to find a way out faster. They won't be able to hold them for long. Sirius opened the map and was surprised, for this map only showed the mechanisms to seal the gate. There is no mechanism to open the gate. Charlotte wasn't given a break either. Wolves were throwing themselves at him from different directions, but he handled his sword very well. In a moment, 2 wolves immediately pounced on him. Charlotte decided not to risk it and moved away. Looking to the side, he saw that there was a button of some sort. He didn't think long and slipped his sword into the mechanism. The mechanism immediately went off in a flash and lowered a cube right in front of their heads, which squeezed the wolves in place. Sirius was also trying to find a way out of this dungeon, But the wolves wouldn't stop harassing them and defenses were already on edge. The warriors turned back and saw that the gate had opened. They shouted to the captain that the gates had opened. Sirius thought, how can they open on their own? Sirius didn't think about it for long and got up and started running as fast as he could toward the exit. The wolf caught up with him and grabbed his leg. Charlotte was very pleased with himself, for he had solved the problem in 1 and 2. And it was an easy solution for him. But Sirius was still fighting the wolf and yelled that his leg was badly injured. The wolf didn't make it either and immediately died on the spot. Charlotte was on his way and said that this sword turned out to be pretty good. At one point he hit a dead end and the system told him to take a right turn. Charlotte was ruthless against his enemies and left behind a pile of dead wolves, which were all dead. The warrior was telling the captain that his leg was very badly wounded. And was it really worth continuing the journey? It seems to him that the monsters here are unusually strong. Should they retreat and rest for a while? Sirius replied that there would be no retreat, and Charlotte was already ahead of them. If he found Shia, they were in trouble. But Sirius realized that he had a map. If he didn't do the task at hand, his brother would surely kill him. Along the way, they came across dead wolves, and the road structure is completely consistent with the map, and it's the right way. And the map was drawn backwards. And now he realized that his brother had almost killed him. The warrior stopped and said there was another fork in the road. He asked the captain which way should they go so they wouldn't lose time. Sirius looked and saw that the map showed the right way. He took charge and ordered them to take the left path. It would be shorter and faster. The system kept helping Charlotte get to her destination. After a few minutes, she said, the guy arrived in the boss's room. Charlotte suddenly wondered why boss Shia was standing outside. Shia told the guy that in order for him to enter the scepter bunker he must have some abilities. Charlotte raised his sword above his head and said that Azathoth must be inside this house. Shia said his goddess Azathoth would take this guy's head. Charlotte was surprised and asked with wonder. Charlotte asked him, does he think Azathoth is a woman? Shia replied that the goddess Azathoth has fair skin and weak lingering fragments. But if she is not a woman, then who is a man? Charlotte didn't think for long. He saw the mechanism next to him and immediately stuck his blade in there to make it work. Charlotte said that whatever they thought and whatever they did, he gives them kudos for it. Immediately afterward, the mechanism went off, but Shia wasn't scared and stood still and prepared to face the huge axe that was heading towards him. But the axe didn't even work against him, and Shia easily swung his sword and shattered the axe into several pieces. Charlotte was surprised and told Shia that he didn't even need a weapon to deal with the traps. Shia didn't waste any time and immediately pounced on the guy with his strong attacks, and told the guy to tell him that Azathoth was a goddess, and he realized it was disrespectful to the heroes and an insult to him. Let him now prepare to die. Charlotte was surprised that Shia came up to him so quickly, but he wasn't afraid and put his sword up for defense. Shia said that the guy's sword was on its way to the other world. Charlotte got very angry and saw his sword break. Charlotte said it was a hard hit, but that's a good thing. And now it's his turn to strike back. Charlotte used a swift body kick attack, but he went for the breach. But at the last moment he turned around and attacked from behind. Charlotte immediately attacked from behind without even thinking what would happen next. But Shia turned around sharply and deflected his attack. Charlotte realized that his strike was blocked with him. Shia said there was no surprise. It's his ability to create physical clones. Immediately after saying that, he thrust his sword at the guy with a mighty blow. Charlotte didn't expect it and used his blade to defend himself. Shia said that the goddess Azathoth has also intensified several times, and killing him is how easy it is, and it's like handing out an insect. Charlotte held on to the last and felt he was very strong. He's the strongest boss and so far now he's in the shit. But suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Shia's clone flying at him from the other side. Charlotte shifted and kicked at the clone, but Charlotte couldn't handle that kind of pressure and flew into the wall. He realized that he had expected this guy to have the ability to clone. There was a battle going on the other side as well, and the warrior was yelling to Sirius that he had brought them all to a standstill again. But the monster handled them very easily, and at the last blow he brought his hammer down over Sirius' body. He shouted to the others not to run away, for he could not move. Sirius shouted to his warriors to hold him and have someone help him get out of here. There was a strong and fast attack that dealt with this monster. The monster shattered into small pieces after such hard and fast blows. Sirius stood still and prayed the whole time. Daphne stepped in front of him and asked him, "I think someone was calling for help?" Sirius was overjoyed when he saw her. Daphne told him as she asked him, "Were they the ones who had called for help just now?" Sirius replied that yes, it was them. The warriors standing behind him said they were saved, and he thought he was going to die here. The second warrior said that Daphne had destroyed the stone giant into 2 pieces. He even ran away so fast that he completely forgot about the captain. He should be fine, but Daphne wouldn't talk to him for long, and with her foot she walked up to him and punched him in the face. The warriors saw this and shouted to the captain, and one of them was saying it was all over. The captain had been knocked out. Daphne looked at them and said, "What a bunch of useless garbage from Area Z. Let them just look at themselves. They each claim to be brave heroes, but they shake in fear of the monsters. It's hilarious and they feel very sorry for them. And if it were up to him, Captain Sirius, the world would have been under the Demon Lord's rule a long time ago. And if he wants to remain a brave hero, they need to go back and train hard first. But though what can they do? Let them see for themselves, and it's all more like a joke. Now get them out of here at once." The warriors replied that they would leave here now. They will hurry up and leave. Daphne said that according to the intel, room 3055 should be on the side of the South Bridge, and the point is at 37. Daphne said she would just walk there through the shortcut. She gathered her strength and walked through the walls, destroying them in front of her. At this time, Charlotte was getting a little underwhelmed and saw that Shia's power was greater than his, and needs to resolve that somehow and kill him. Shia said that Lord Azathoth has already agreed with him. As long as he doesn't kill him, she will marry him, and he fights for his beauty and love Azathoth, and struck a mighty blow with his sword. Charlotte felt a strong pressure, but stepped back a little so that the attack didn't hurt him too much. He even thought, "Isn't there a female monster in this place?" But after that, abruptly the wall next to him collapsed. He looked at the girl and saw that it was Daphne. Daphne asked, "Why is there another man from Area Z? And it seems he's already badly injured, beaten up by monsters." Daphne said she'd take care of that monster, and he doesn't need to throw his life away. Let him get out of here. Charlotte said that this boss is stronger than even himself, and let her help him defeat this boss. Daphne was surprised very much and asked, "Help him?" Charlotte replied, "To lock up that goal forever." Daphne asked the guy, "Is he even in his right mind? Otherwise he wouldn't understand what she just told him." Charlotte said that he could stand those monsters, but Daphne told him to stay out of it. But suddenly the system said the target was locked. Otherwise, things were about to get worse. She didn't stop and kissed him. The system immediately showed that the strength of the attack had increased greatly, and the favorability also increased to 77%. Daphne came to her senses and immediately stepped back into the distance. She didn't understand how this had even happened. Shia got really pissed off and asked, "Are they ignoring him? And also flirting while they are fighting him?" Daphne also lost her temper and told the guy to get out of here. But she understood and she was very uncomfortable. After all, she hadn't kissed anyone yet. Shia jumped at them and asked, "Is he looking down on him?" But Daphne stepped aside immediately so the attack wouldn't hit her. Charlotte also managed to dodge and the boss didn't hit them. Charlotte didn't stop there and continued to fight him and immediately flew to attack. Shia was greatly surprised and noticed that this guy's strength had increased a bit. Daphne had not recovered yet and kept thinking that he suddenly kissed her too. But was it for him to cover her mouth? He also used his language. The system immediately showed that its favorability had increased to 85%. Charlotte continued her battle and in a moment shouted to Daphne to stop the space. But something happened to Daphne, and she felt her armor shattering. Charlotte didn't have time to save her, and the attack pierced the armor. Daphne looked at her armor and saw that it was completely destroyed and her chest came out into the fresh air. Charlotte stood up for her and said it was very close, and the boss almost guessed with his attack. Shia looked at it and said it was a very good reflex, but Charlotte didn't stop her and continued to defend her. Daphne was still coming around and was out of sorts, but the favorability was showing at 88%. She began to feel an electric shock run through her body. Her body felt paralyzed, but she couldn't move. The system showed all the time that its favorability had increased to 92%, the strength of the attack as well. Shia realized that this guy's strength was really growing. He needed to finish and take him out soon. Daphne was still under the influence of love and realized it was bad. And that sensation extended to the lower part of her body and her legs, losing strength. And it feels so strange. She's never felt anything but this. And if this continues, her whole body is going to go stiff even faster. But the system didn't cheat and showed that the favorability was 97%. She realized that she didn't want to fight in this condition. She tried to calm herself down and not dwell on it anymore. And she's here to defeat the monsters. She needs to get all the movement she can to resist this daze. But this guy has already helped her block 2 attacks. And she doesn't want to be a liability in the battle. Her strength is not enough, and they must unite to win. Daphne went up to him and told him she wouldn't team up with him. And not working with friends is her principle. She always killed monsters alone. Charlotte didn't expect that answer and was greatly surprised. Daphne said there were 2 monsters, one for each of them, and they would fight separately. And that way she can stick to her cooperation. And they can defeat the monsters faster. And maybe he'll take something for that too. They stood in front of the monsters and Charlotte said that with her, he was sure they could defeat those monsters. Daphne felt his hands and felt warm. And that sensational sound is back. And the favorability is already 99%. But on the other hand, Azathoth was very sick, and her body was secreting strange fluids. She realized that this body without a heart was nearing its limit. Shadow was surprised and told him that he was coughing up blood. Azathoth asked her, didn't she take care of this man? Daphne remembered at that moment that in the past, she had just pushed him away and told him to get out, but now she offered him the next way to fight. And that's because she can defeat monsters quickly. Well, or for the reason it's a strong desire to be closer to him. And it all keeps bubbling up inside her. Azathoth told Shatil that he doesn't have much time to live, and to let Shia deal with this man. And this is his bloody spirit. Let her take it, and let Shura consume it in the future. And thus his body may be required by them. And once he gets his physical duplication, he can cheat the system's sign. But with Shia's body, he can only withstand his power for a few 10 seconds. And within those few seconds, he's forcibly going to get his heart back. He has no choice but to take it. He has to take the risk now. Shatil asked that the human body will die right here. Azathoth told her to stop worrying about this human. Shatil said that it only appears from the outside. She actually has an aversion to the man. The battle was still going on and Charlotte felt several of his defenses just fractured. And even the increased strength was not enough. Shia pounced on them. But Daphne saw it even faster and grabbed the guy and yelled at him to be more careful. Daphne used her defenses and tried to fend off the attack, saving Charlotte from death. Charlotte was greatly surprised and looking at her breasts marveled at the fact that she was actually beautiful. But the force of Shia's punch was so strong that Daphne couldn't even handle it and flew both of them against the wall. Daphne looked at the guy and felt those feelings come back to her again. And the system immediately showed that the defense had risen to 1310 points. But Shia didn't stop and teamed up with his clone to make one last attack. Suddenly Daphne saw that the guy was bleeding, and she must have accidentally given it away. She jumped up and apologized. And it was an accident. Shia said that he would take 2 attacks, and they would both die with 1 strike. They both immediately aimed their attack at the guys. The force of the attack was so strong that it immediately destroyed everything behind it at the moment of ultimate target. Shia rejoiced after that, and said that those 2 people should have been blown to pieces. But in the end, Daphne took over everything and protected both of them from an imaginary death. She stood in one position and did not move. Daphne looked at her armor and saw that there was nothing left of it. But it should have absorption, but most of it was impacted. Daphne asked the guy if he was okay. Charlotte replied that he was fine, just a few broken ribs. Daphne tells the guy that he's not capable of defeating this boss. And if he survives fighting him, Yoli will definitely die. And this is a battle just for her. But she realized that after pushing him down, and Shia is very strong. And the desire to get closer to his body started in her. She actually wants to support him, but he'll get close to her again and experience that feeling of domination. Daphne said her armor was shattered by the last attack, but she's really stressing out after that now, and she doesn't want them to see her body. She has to use one hand to cover her breasts and to prevent exposure, leaving only one hand to fight the monster. And in this situation, her combat effectiveness would be greatly reduced. And it would be better if he could hold her breasts and cover her up. Daphne was greatly surprised and didn't understand why she was seized by such thoughts. She mustn't let her desires control her. She realized that an S-rank brave, a hero, her body and mind had gone through countless training. But this couldn't be, because right now she couldn't control her body. But this is her own desire. Charlotte said he is really in so much pain, and he needs to find a lily for treatment after this. Daphne knew he was inside. And this guy is a very wavy person. That's it. And this feeling, it's not a desire. It's a duty to protect the weak. And protecting the weak is not traumatized. She reached her hands out at him and realized that it was her duty as a brave hero. She must protect him. The system has shown that the favorability is 100%. And before closing the contact, all statistics will be doubled. She hugged him again and pressed him to her chest. But Shia and the other found them and approached with their swords. Shia made an immediate crushing attack, but Daphne used her strength and dodged along with her boyfriend. She began to realize that the sensation was even more intense than before, and she felt as if a flame was burning inside her. She's actually a brave hero. She must overcome these difficulties. Charlotte at this time felt his lips completely wrapped around hers. And her body is so soft, and she is also very sturdy and strong. Daphne told him that she holds him and protects him, and so far he hasn't been hurt. And don't let him think too much about it. Charlotte said naturally, he and she are people with honorable intentions. All the sacrifice necessary to defeat the monster. Shia looked at them and said that the power had increased by 4 times. And that's the limit about what his body can withstand. Daphne said the monsters had split into 4. Charlotte at this time thought that to be safe, he would stay in this position for a while longer. Shatil at this time thought and remembered Azathoth's words that she drank his blood, and it resonated in her body, and if he died, she would not die and would survive. Azathoth told Shatil that once she gets her heart, then let her have it back, and then she will get a very great power, and she can become one of her girls, and she will experience supreme joy. Now let her go and find Shia. Shatil turned around and immediately replied that she would go now. Azathoth thought that whenever she closed her eyes, she could look outside through the bloody soul. Azathoth suddenly stopped her and asked her what kind of fan she has. Shatil replied that she is not an accumulator to physical contact, so there was no need to do that. Azathoth said to Dream then. He is not in love with her. Only a powerful demon king earned that privilege with her, and she's too obnoxious. She's just a good watchdog, and so get her out of here. Shatil lowered her head and answered everything correctly. She realized that this guy was even more disgusting than that man. Daphne defended the guy with her own strength and told the guy to hold her really tight. Charlotte replied that he understood. She started to defend herself against the attacks and pressed the guy even harder against her. The system showed at once that the defense had increased, and so had all the other data. Charlotte at this time felt like he could barely breathe. He is surrounded with crushing pressure, but it's actually very soft. Daphne continued to fight the monsters and could not give in to them, for if she did, they would die. But suddenly, Donnie felt like she couldn't move, and her energy was running out so fast. Shia was telling her to kill herself to get the love of Satos, and he's sacrificing himself, and if he loses, it's over immediately. Daphne turned around and saw that they were filling the large magic that would soon be directed at them. She immediately felt her magic was gone. Shia shouted at them that they could both go to hell. But Charlotte, in the meantime, had risen to level 25. But Charlotte didn't stop there and came out to do battle with the monster. Shia said the guy broke out of his resting place. Charlotte said it was his turn, and using his fist he immediately punched the monster in the stomach. Shia couldn't handle this attack, and it was so strong that he flew back into the wall. Shia went through several walls and fell right in front of Shatil's feet. She was startled and didn't expect that. Shatil asked Shia, did he get hit and walk away? Daphne told the guy that her power was almost completely drained. Charlotte replied that it was fine. Let him protect himself. The other clones suddenly released their orb and aimed it at the boys. Charlotte didn't run away and stayed to protect Daphne. Charlotte shouted back for them to try his level 25 fist and repelled the clone's attack. Daphne was surprised and thought, How did his fists suddenly become so powerful? Shadil at this time was looking at the monster and thinking. Azathoth told her that this was a very good chance and let Shay eat a bloody soul. He asked her why she was standing like this. Shatil remembered that very mushroom and yelled that she never wanted to be his girl, and he's making her feel really bad. She took that ball and smashed it against the wall so Azathoth wouldn't control her anymore. After that, Azathoth was wounded and asked her, how dare she cast her bloody soul and break it? Azathoth decided to act differently and broke her arm. Automatically, Shatil felt it too and yelled out her hand. She didn't have time to break the orb, and it fell out of her hand. Azathoth automatically moved with her powers and caught that ball. She immediately put it into Shia's mouth. Shia suddenly started acting very strange. Charlotte looked at the clones and asked what was wrong with them, but turning around she saw Azathoth behind her. But looking around he saw so many clones. Charlotte asked, how come there was so much Azathoth here? Suddenly he remembered that the system had marked his real body. He immediately opened the map and told the system to find Azathoth's location. Shadow looked and asked how could this have happened. Azathoth at this time was saying that they only have minutes for everything, and they could suck everything out of his body. But Daphne didn't stop and immediately went to fight with her fists on Azathoth. But she was surprised when Azathoth stopped her. Azathoth waved her hand and said they were on their way. But the blow was so strong that she flew into the rock. Charlotte was frightened very much for her and shouted her name. But Daphne was exhausted and just lay there. The system told the guy that Azathoth's bark was Oblivion, and he had one chance to activate it. Charlotte was surprised and asked what? He has only one chance to find his real body. Azathoth said that everyone here is a she, and anything in the system that could threaten it would immediately lose its power. Azathoth asked the guy if he wanted to fight him, but the system told the guy that he was invulnerable to all of Azathoth's attacks. Azathoth says he's aware of that, and he would never attack them or hurt them. Instead, he just wants him to enjoy himself again. Azathoth caught him and held him by all his limbs. He said he had Charlotte in his arms now, and he had such a soft body, with no outside force, and he wouldn't be able to escape. But Azathoth said the pleasure isn't in it, and the system can't stop it. Now it will come up and extract every last drop, and then he would reach an extreme level of pleasure and then die. Charlotte starts yelling that he has no interest in them. He's only attracted to beautiful girls. Azathoth laughed and said whether he was interested or not, his body would reveal the true answer. And of that he was quite sure. Charlotte shouted that it wasn't. Let them release him immediately. But suddenly, Shatil stepped into the fray and knocked Azathoth to the ground. Azathoth got angry and shouted at her. Shatil told the guy that he could maintain that multiverse for a few more seconds, and let him not let her grab himself again. Charlotte released his hands and realized that he had finally managed to break free. And if he had a few seconds left, so be it. Azathoth asked Shatil why she is helping him, and if he dies, she won't survive either. He just doesn't understand. Shatil replied that maybe that was how she would repay the favor of the mushroom. Azathoth was surprised and asked in wonder, mushroom? What did she just say? Shatil replied that she meant that she didn't want the man to die. Azathoth said that he would die later anyway. Shatil picked the moment and told the system to activate the ability. But it turned out to be very fast, and the attack happened. Azathoth was surprised that Shatil had moved right on top of her. He wondered if someone had fallen on top of her. He looked and saw Shatil in front of him. Shatil was surprised and saw that she was still alive. Azathoth thought at that moment, why can't he feel her? She is completely beyond her senses. She soon realized that what this guy had done was set her free. But does he really still have time to worry about that right now? And she needs to get her heart back. Charlotte grabbed Shia's weapon and immediately felt that it was very heavy. He can't even lift it with both hands. Azathoth asked him, does he seriously think that having a weapon makes a difference? Does he think he can overpower him with it? He can crush him with his raw strength. And now they can finish what they started earlier. The system immediately showed Charlotte using a swift kick to the body right now. Azathoth said that because of the system's influence, its attacks on him are ineffective. But with his strength alone, he won't be able to harm his body. Charlotte replied that he never said he wanted to fight. He only wanted to kill him and drink his blood. Azathoth told him that if he thought he could get away with this move, he was wrong. She used the system and showed that the wait time was 10 seconds, and he has no strength left anywhere, and not even friends either. Now let him obediently return to his embrace. He will let him die in unprecedented bliss. But in a moment she stopped and saw that the target was blocked. Charlotte started running away from him in different directions and didn't let herself be caught. Azathoth thought it wasn't even 10 seconds. But how could he activate system skills again? Charlotte said that each clone of him creates himself a true real body. But he can't fool the system. And to the system, each clone treats him as a new individual. But he can also lock up his clones and constantly activate his fast body and destroy all of his attacks. And if they want to catch him, he'll have to cancel the clones. Or they can keep playing this game. And he can keep playing it for a long time. But it seems to him that his time is about to run out. Azathoth suddenly realized that he hadn't thought of this possibility. And there is no more opportunity to catch him now. Should he run away and find a new body, or continue to hunt the weak human? But he really is a monster god. And he always will be. But the system is only on his side. And soon he will have the power to overpower it. And if this continues, he will defeat him sooner or later. Suddenly he jumped up and went through the upper wall. Charlotte was surprised and wondered if Azathoth was trying to escape. But Azathoth has decided that he's using SII cloning to split his body into many small fragments. Looking up at the sky, he saw that Azathoth's body had exploded. Soon it happened, so that its particles were scattered all over the world. The system showed the guy that a new quest had started. He must obtain a fragment of Azathoth to slow the effects of the poison and increase his life expectancy. But he must act very quickly and deliberately. After all, he has about 48 days and 6 hours to live.